One shall stand, one shall fall.
Ghostbusters, what do you want?
I'm Batman.
Blue Devil, also known as Daniel Cassidy, first appeared in the pages of DC Comics in 1984 in the Fury of Firestorm series, issue number 24. He was created by writer Gary Cohn and artist Paris Cullins. In his original origin story, Cassidy was a Hollywood special effects technician and stuntman who built a mechanical demon suit he had designed for a film. During one of his performances, a mishap happened, causing the demon Nibiros to appear and blast Cassidy. As a result, the demon suit became fused to his body and he gained superhuman powers, using them to fight against the forces of darkness and protect the Earth. In the comics, he has been a member of the Justice League Dark and Shadow Pact before Flashpoint. Blue Devil's origins were similar but had some differences, such as his interactions with Nibiros. In one instance, he made a deal with Nibiros to become more successful, but was in fact turned into a real demon. At some point later, he was killed in action, but was later resurrected by the sorcerer Felix Faust during the Day of Judgment event. He was resurrected into a powerful demon and came into possession of the legendary trident of Lucifer, and began to team with Shadow Pact, yet his powers are similar in each iteration. But before I get into that, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, hit that like button and subscribe for more DC videos. But for now, let's get back to Blue Devil. Blue Devil possesses a variety of superhuman powers and abilities as a result of his demon suit being fused to his body, including superhuman strength, superhuman durability, illusion casting, where he can create illusion to deceive his enemies and making them see things that aren't real, supernatural detection, giving him the ability to see and interact with other demons and other supernatural entities, and of course, technological proficiency. Cassidy is a skilled special effects technician and engineer able to repair and modify this suit. It's worth noting that some of these abilities may have varied in different versions or appearances of the character in the comics, but one of the aspects of the character has carried on in each iteration is the fact that he's a magnet for the weird and supernatural. Due to the unique way in which he received his powers, it made him a magnet for wild magic, weird happenings, and other disasters. Some of these events have occurred in various storylines he was in. Since 1984, he's been featured in many different characters and stories, including Demonic Alliance, Blue Devil issues 1 to 5. This was the character's first solo series, which detailed his origin stories and his initial battles against supernatural threats. Demonic, Blue Devil's issues number 20 to 26. This storyline dealt with the Blue Devil's attempt to reclaim his soul from the demon Neron and his battle against other demons. The Culling, Teen Titans Volume 4, issue number 9 to 15. Blue Devil was featured here as a mentor figure to a group of young heroes. In this crossover event that involved the Teen Titans, Blue Devil himself has appeared in many other stories and continues to be a standard on several magic-based teams, and is one of the more interesting characters due to his unique mixture of technology and magic that set him apart from some of the other occult heroes in the DC universe. My Blue Beetle was Ted Kord. He would appear in guest spots and limited series here and there, and in the looming Infinite Crisis he was killed, and we were introduced to a new Blue Beetle, Jaime Reyes. Aside from the fact that Reyes is a teenager, the bigger difference is that he has powers versus Kord, who was powerless. I mean, he was a smart dude, like Iron Man level smart, good athlete, good at hand-to-hand stuff, used gadgets. He was a goofy version of Batman who wasn't trying to intimidate people, so people didn't really take him too seriously. They still don't. The core of his name revolved around an artifact called the Blue Scarab, who was used by his predecessor Dan Garrett, who was able to derive some powers from it. Ted, no matter how hard he tried, could not access its power. When Ted died, Jaime Reyes came in possession of the Scarab and it attached him, creating that blue suit you see in the movie, allowing him to do some crazy things like fly out to space and re-enter Earth without a problem. Listen, that's not as easy as it sounds. Generally, you need a substantial piece of armor or resilience to re-enter the atmosphere. In fact, most asteroids that enter the Earth's atmosphere burn out before even hitting the Earth. So when I say Blue Beetle's armor is no joke, it's no joke. He can also do some other cool stuff like create weapons, including swords, blasters, and plenty else. But so what? Listen, in truth, Jaime Reyes has existed as a character for over 15 years, and in that time, DC has tried to make the Blue Beetle Jaime Reyes happen 3 times in his own solo series, and they have failed to hold the audience interest 3 times. I mean, Miles Morales came out after Blue Beetle, and Marvel did a far better job with it than DC could ever do with Jaime. For me, despite how long Jaime has been around, I still feel like he's a character in development, in a sense that I feel down the line, the right writer can do him justice, kind of like Grant Morrison did with Animal Man. That being said, why does Blue Beetle matter? Blue Beetle matters because he represents the underdog hero. Jaime Reyes is a relatable character who struggles to balance his superhero life with his personal life. He's a teenager who's still trying to figure out his place in the world and his newfound powers. Jaime's struggles are what makes him an interesting, compelling character. He's not a perfect hero like Superman or Batman, but he tries his best to do what's right. He's also one of the few Latino superheroes in mainstream comic books, especially during the time in which he was created. Which is important for Latinos like myself because there's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to see yourself in these heroes, but it's less about representation and more about seeing yourself as a hero. He's a kid from El Paso, Texas, which is not a giant city by any means. He's not rich, nor does he have a support line like the Robins and Kid Flashes of the world. Yet, despite this, he wants to do what's right and push forward, a trait many bigger name heroes see in him.
Superman has many space-based villains like Darkseid and Zod because he's one of the most, if not the most powerful hero across all comics. For the sake of live action, it can sometimes be difficult to get this power across unless there are big live action set pieces. But if we learned anything from Black Adam, small, intimate action moments can really make a difference. If the DCU wants to keep Superman grounded while keeping him powerful, I think Metallo would be a great villain on his own, or as part of another villain's plan like Lex Luthor or even the military. Metallo is a mainstay in DC Comics and has appeared in many live-action TV series, including the Arrowverse and Smallville, as well as many animated projects including the Superman animated series and the Batman Superman Public Enemies movie. The most well-known version of Metallo is John Corbin, whose origins have changed depending on who was writing him. Prior to 2011, Corbin was a con man fatally injured in a car crash who was picked up by cybernetics expert Emmett Vale. Vale had the idea that Superman was really part of an advanced front of an alien invasion to Earth. Vale took Corbin's brain into the body of a cyborg, first powered by uranium, then powered by a Kryptonian heart. Vale wanted Corbin to kill Superman, and after Vale gave his body a more human appearance, Corbin killed him, but still went ahead with the request to kill Superman, or at least try. Due to the kryptonite, Corbin, now Metallo, was able to overpower Superman, but Luthor intervened prior to Metallo striking the final blow and removed the kryptonite, effectively putting Metallo out of commission temporarily. The current Metallo was a sergeant under General Sam Lane, the father of Lois Lane. When Superman escaped military custody, he volunteered for Project Steel Soldier due to his crush on Lois Lane, believing that it would impress her. While in the Steel Soldier armor, Brainiac took over his body, causing his heart to explode. He continued to fight until Superman was able to convince Corbin to fight off Brainiac's control. He later fell into a coma after his body was taken by the US Army. Scientists revealed that the suit was the only thing keeping him alive. General Lane ordered them to find a way to keep him alive, and they implanted a Kryptonian heart into his suit as it was the only power source compatible with him. Metallo is a superpowered cyborg with everything from super strength, super stamina, enhanced senses, and the power to analyze with his computer-powered brain. He is essentially a Terminator with a human brain, and one other exception, that is, his Kryptonian heart, which can weaken Superman enough to make him beatable. He would be a great inclusion in the DCU, whether they use the military or conman origins, and could be a solid primary or supporting villain. The difficult part with Earth-based villains for Superman is that it's hard at times to realistically look at the fight and think that Superman is going to lose. Metallo is imposing because his kryptonite heart allows him to weaken Superman enough to realistically stand a chance. Parasite is another one of these type of villains, whose power allowed them to weaken Superman in some way to stand a fighting chance. Rudy Jones was a janitor at Star Labs, and during a moment of error, he opened the waste container thinking that there was something valuable in it, but instead, he was bombarded with radiation that mutated him into a creature that could absorb the life energy of people, leaving them in the state where they turn into skeletons. Further mutations, including battles with Superman and attempts to turn him back into a human, transformed him into a menacing creature with immense powers of absorption for all types of energy, including, but not limited to electricity, heat, and even the intellect of others. At one point, he absorbed a shapeshifter, allowing him to mimic the DNA of his victims for a period of time, making him a worthy opponent for the Man of Steel. Parasite is often used in the Suicide Squad and contracted for specific missions that require the use of his unique abilities. He is also known to befriend Metallo, so including them as villains in the same film could work, or use them together in another Suicide Squad film to further build out the DCU. In comparison to Metallo though, Parasite could be used initially as a sympathetic villain in that he is an everyday man who was transformed into a monster by accident. This accident kept him from ever having a normal life, forcing him to feed on the life force of others simply to exist. Thanks for watching, and if you're enjoying what you're seeing, hit that like button. It really does help me to get these videos to more viewers like you. And for more DC stories, head over to my channel. But for now, let's continue. For the most part, I've touched upon more Earth-based villains because for a live-action movie, it can be difficult at times to portray some space-based characters realistically. Although it can be done, such as in the case of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies and Infinity War, it requires a lot of work and it might not be the best option for the first go around for Superman. On the other hand, bringing certain characters from space to Earth would actually work, as in the case of Brainiac or Mondo. But I think one that would work in a James Gunn run DCU would be Lobo. The main man, Lobo, is simply put, awesome. He's a badass bounty hunter from space with a crazy origin story in that he caused the death of his entire species by genocide. Initially created as a satire of Wolverine, he became a popular character in the 90s, encountering Superman several times in both roles as ally and adversary. Most recently, in DC Rebirth, he was freed by Maxwell Lord and served in the Suicide Squad. Batman puts a bomb in his head to blow it up, and upon regeneration of his head, realizes that Maxwell Lord had him under control, and when his head blew up, he was freed from it. He later accepts the offer from Batman to join the Justice League. Power-wise, Lobo is a beast with super strength, stamina, durability, and more. He is essentially immortal with the ability to regenerate much like Wolverine does. Even the removal of his head does not kill him, as in the incident with Batman. He's also a talented marksman, talented fighter, super intelligent, and banned from the afterlife, meaning that if he were to die, his spirit could wander around and possess other people. Lobo has made numerous appearances in the DC animated works, including his most well-known spot in the Superman the Animated Series and the DC Animated Universe.
Deadman. Deadman is one of my favorite characters in DC, mainly for his connections to the paranormal. He's literally a superhero ghost, which, as odd as it sounds, it works perfectly. First debuting in Strange Adventures number 205 in October of 1967, he's been featured in a lot of stories connected to the Justice League Dark, several Batman-related appearances in media, and even some of his own comic miniseries. The story of Deadman, as with any ghost story, started before his death. Boston Brand was brought up in an angry and abusive household, leading him to run away at a young age. Like many stories of runaways, he went to the circus. During his time at the circus, he was trained as an acrobat and aerialist, eventually becoming a top performer in the circus under the moniker Deadman. Deadman was not the kindest person around, partly due to his success and his upbringing. He had violent and hedonistic tendencies that led him to not being well liked. At one point, an assassin murders him, and it seemed like that was it for Boston Brand. But his spirit was transported to the place between life and death by the Hindu goddess Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna transformed Boston Brand's spirit, empowering him with unique abilities and an effort to allow Brand to atone for his sins. Brand returned to Earth, now using the name Deadman, beginning his heroic journey. But so what? Why should you care? Well, it's this unique situation that really drives writers to use his character in different ways. I mean, for all intents and purposes, he sounds like a run-of-the-mill ghost. But remember when I said Rama transformed his spirit? Well, in doing so, she gave him some powers that proved super useful. Stuff like flight, invisibility, communicating with the dead, and even being able to travel across dimensional boundaries. Oh wait, let me not forget the possession of people's bodies. I know, he's a ghost, so obviously he's going to be able to possess people. But let's be real, how many characters, let alone superheroes, are dead and their primary power is possessing people? This makes for a ton of different storytelling ideas, because you can't just go and punch somebody or pick up a gun and a sword and attack someone. So writers are forced to create stories where Deadman has to resolve these situations that's out of the norm for comic book characters. That being said, there's far more to Boston Brand than just possession. In fact, pre-Flashpoint, Boston Brand was a little different and far more tragic. But before I get into that, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, hit that like button and subscribe for more DC videos. Flashpoint, like many other big crisis storylines that DC released, was an attempt to reboot the DC universe to reorganize their large roster of heroes, and in doing so, change some parts of their origins to better fit the next few years of storytelling. In the case of Flashpoint, DC took the most radical departure to date in order to modernize these heroes and their stories. For Deadman, before Flashpoint, there was more of a focus on the search for his killer that ran across several different comics. In this case, the killer was found to be a character named Hook, who killed Brand in an attempt to impress the League of Assassins. This backfired for him though, as the League's leader assumed that it was a failed assassination attempt due to the fact that Brand's twin brother took over for him at the circus. And due to this, they killed Hook, but Brand found no peace and continued to use his powers to help others and atone for his sins. One of the other aspects that I enjoyed about this character, but is really tragic, is that this version of Deadman was invisible to everyone who didn't have a predisposition to magic and the supernatural. This prevented him from making his presence known without possessing people. I can't imagine how lonely it must be there in the world knowing that for the most part, no matter how many people are around you, no one will notice you. Despite this, there are some characters who were able to see him, most notably magic users like Satana and Constantine. Speaking of Constantine, the relationship between him and Brand is pretty crappy at times due to how John tends to handle situations. During their time on Justice League Dark, they worked on resolving many issues dealing with the occult, including a situation where Deadman wanted to help June Moore, who was being used by the Enchantress. This was all for naught as Constantine forcibly reunited June and Enchantress, angering Deadman. Another situation had John lock Deadman inside the Earth-3 Sea King. Suffice to say, they were not the best of friends, but they worked alongside one another for the greater good. If you want to read up more on Deadman, check out the following. The Forever People, issues number 9 to 10, where Deadman gets some help from the Forever People in his quest to find Hook. Deadman, Dead Again, issues number 1 to 5. Set during the Crisis on Infinite Earths event, this series finds Deadman trying to stop the sorcerer Darius Caldera, who is attempting to find the heroic souls for the demon Neron. Brightest Days, issues number 1 to 24. A White Lantern ring is given to Brand, allowing him to come back to life in order to protect Star City Forest from the dark avatar of Neron. The series ends with his death, leading him back to his ghostly existence. Overall, in terms of storytelling and creativity, I think Deadman is solid and is a must-read and watch for any DC fan. As I continue to research these obscure and often forgotten characters, I find that their existence and use are reflective of the comic industry as a whole. Comic characters and their stories are often cyclical. Rarely are stories completely new and original, and often contain bits and pieces of other story plots and themes. Characters in the same way are recycled. Maybe their origin is changed, or a new person takes on the identity altogether. Characters like the Blue Beetle and Spider-Man have heroes who share their identity, whether as a legacy existing together, like Peter Parker and Miles Morales, or a successor, like Ted Kord and Jaime Reyes. In other situations, a replacement becomes a primary hero, and the original becomes secondary, like the Golden Age and Silver Age versions of Green Lantern and The Flash. The Outsiders were formed by Batman as a covert team of heroes to deal with missions that were too controversial and hot for the Justice League to deal with, such as conflicts between nations. For the most part, this is how they existed in comics, with different variations of membership and leadership, such as when Nightwing and Arsenal took over for Batman. Yet, despite their history, they were not the first Outsiders. A few years before Batman put the team together, another group debuted in DC's first issue comics number 10 in 1976. This group had no similarities to Batman's group, and were in fact Outsiders, far closer to the X-Men than covert heroes. The Outsiders here consisted of individuals who did not fit in with others due in large part to their deformities and mutations. Members included Lizard Johnny, a frogman who could regrow limbs, or Mighty Mary, whose head looks like a normal blonde woman, but below the neckline she was a bulky figure with fish-scaled limbs. How about the Amazing Ronnie, a Cyclops with 4 arms, and the Wheeler Dealer, Harry Larry, who was bonded to his truck and provided transport for the group. Also there was Billy, a child with massive head that was near invulnerable.
These oddballs were led by Doc Scary, who was previously a surgeon sent by NASA into space to investigate alien signals. After crashing on the alien planet, they rebuilt him with a cybernetic hands and a disfigured face. He hides his face with a mask and recruits the others to join him in his headquarters, which happens to be 20 stories under a hospital. Based on that, it's easy to see why this incarnation did not last beyond that one issue. There's nothing inherently wrong with them. Even the weird and odd design choice, they seem to be excessive. What made the X-Men unique was not simply their mutation, but more so their struggle to belong within society despite their difference, and in many ways, it paralleled the struggles of minorities and the LGBTQ movement during the 60s and 70s. These outsiders, on the other hand, were based in part on the 1932 film Freaks, which focuses on a circus sideshow and puts out a similar message about the acceptance of others no matter their appearance. Despite the positive message, the team did not last. Perhaps the negative connotation of freak shows, or the similarities to other groups like the X-Men, or even DC's Doom Patrol, led editors to phase them out. They did make an appearance in Superman Volume No. 1, Issue 692, in a background scene, but beyond that, there's not much else to say. As mentioned earlier, DC repurposed the name for the group led by Batman, and the original Outsiders were pretty much lost to readers. Forgotten, and in fact rarely mentioned when it comes to the histories of the Outsiders in comics. I do not see DC bringing them back. Although interesting, they may serve more as a one-shot or a team-up, but not a full-fledged series. Freak shows are outdated concepts, and having a series whose origin stems from them may not be in the best interest to readers or editors. As of right now though, it looks like the Superman cameo will be the last we see of the original Outsiders.
The Arkham Series. The Arkham Series was a set of Batman games set in its own universe that dealt with the ongoing battle between Batman and the Joker and its escalation into a citywide conflict. Now the question that has come up in interviews and previews is if the new game Gotham Knights is a sequel, and the answer is a resounding
no.
That doesn't mean there aren't similarities. In fact, its style and gameplay is very close to the original games, and in many ways, Gotham Knights will serve as a spiritual sequel to the Arkham games, if nothing else. But none of the games would be here if not for the success of the first game, Arkham Asylum. Asylum released way back in 2009 and was developed by the team at Rocksteady Studios. It followed a story written by Paul Dini, who some of you may know as one of the principal writers for Batman the Animated Series. In fact, many of the game's characters were voiced by some of the cast from the original series, including Kevin Conroy as Batman and Mark Hamill as the Joker, and the return of Arlene Sorkin as Harley Quinn. Arkham Asylum was a showcase for what a superhero game could be, as many of the games in the superhero genre to that were largely poorly received, but Asylum was different. It was universally loved, with near perfect scores from reviewers to the point where it held a Guinness Book record for the most critically acclaimed superhero game ever, until its sequel Arkham City took the title. But none of this would matter if it didn't sell well, and in that aspect it succeeded. Within the first 5 days of release, it sold over 500,000 units, and by the end of September 2009, it sold 2.5 million copies. Game won numerous awards, from Spike Video Game Awards, Game Developers Choice Awards, and many others. Asylum is perhaps one of the best games around in general, and is very much playable over 10 years later. The story focuses on Batman as he works his way through Arkham Asylum to uncover the Joker's plan after the Joker manages to gain control of the asylum. He encounters many notable villains aside from the Joker and Harley Quinn, including Killer Croc, Poison Ivy, and Scarecrow, and many more. Gameplay wise, the developers focused on figuring out a system to make the players really feel like they were Batman.
Before that though, if you guys are enjoying this video so far, hit that like button, and check out some of my other videos if you guys are interested in other DC stories, including topics about the Sandman series on Netflix and the new Black Adam film to hit theaters in October. But for now, back to the video.
What took you so long?
The goal for every superhero video game, first and foremost, is to make you feel like you are the character, that you are that hero. Some games succeed, and to be perfectly honest, most games fail, because they fail to understand the character. Batman is a complex character in terms of gaming because there's so many aspects to him, aside from combat, like his detective side and the stealth aspects. Many games capture the mechanics of his combat pretty well, but they end up falling into the trap of just being another beat 'em up style video game. Rocksteady,
managed to capture these missing aspects along with introducing a free flow combat system that felt unique to Batman. The combat system here is completely 3D and allows for chaining of combos from one enemy to the other. Combo finishers and finishing strikes feel like they come out of a Christopher Nolan movie in a sense that you feel the impact of Batman knocking out a thug using his martial arts prowess. What was really thrilling about the combat system here was that as you got better, Batman felt unbeatable, but not invulnerable. The wrong move or timing could hurt you and throw you off pace. Batman was reasonably balanced in terms of power level. The use of gadgets felt necessary at times to beat certain enemy types. Gadgets are an essential aspect to Batman, whether it's his use of batarangs or even shark repellent.
Hand me down the shark repellent bat spray!
Rocksteady implemented a progression system in terms of upgrading gadgets and getting new ones. Since the story locks Batman within the asylum, use of gadgets and finding new gadgets makes sense story-wise because outside of this setting, one could argue that one quick trip to the Batcave solves this for him. In addition to a variety of batarangs, including remote-controlled ones, the game provided gadgets such as the explosive gel, the Batclaw, a sequencer to unlock doors, and many more. What made these gadgets cool was that they could be used in and out of combat and for traversing the environment itself. Gadgets were essential for stealth portions of the game wherein Batman was faced with enemies who were heavily armed, and confronting them head on would lead to instant death in most cases. So in order to get through these areas as well as some other parts of the game, Rocksteady added what they called Detective Vision. Detective Vision was this mode in the game that allowed the player to view an environment using an X-ray / heat sensing type of vision, as well as providing an analysis of armed enemies including their heart rates and fear levels. The fear levels were pretty cool, because you could do actions like make noises or string up other enemies that would freak out the enemies in the area, affecting their actions and the dialogue. The simplest way to explain it would be like the Predator helmet that uses the heat sensors, with some of the Iron Man helmet mechanics mixed in like the analysis of materials in the environments. All these elements combined created a unique style the audience never experienced before. Sure, we've seen Batman on the big screen and the small screen. As kids, we played with the action figures and we got several instances of Batmans on games, but never were we able to experience the world of Batman in this way before. For the first time, it felt like you were the Dark Knight, and it was up to you to save the city from its greatest threats. The game led to a series of other games that changed the landscape for video games in general, as it truly created an unmatched experience, perhaps only passed by the recent Spider-Man games in terms of quality and gameplay.
So you probably figured out by now that this is a compilation video, but I still appreciate you guys taking a look. There are some videos from my channel on here, and to be honest, there's a lot of videos that aren't, and they were cut for a lot of reasons. But I think this might be the perfect spot for them for you guys to take a look. Also, one more thing, yes, the audio and the voice is kind of inconsistent, and that's mostly because some videos are older, and to be honest, even now I'm still trying to figure out this whole audio thing. It's been hit or miss, and I'm glad that you guys are still sticking by despite it. But I do hope that you guys see improvement in the audio as I keep on going with the channel. Back to the video.
Hey, I'm going for the gold. You get it? Booster Gold.
Booster Gold is from the future. No, seriously. Dude was born in the future, and the short of it is, he couldn't make it in the future, so he went back to the past with future tech to make it as a hero in the present. He's arrogant, chases money, wants fame, wants to be noticed and respected by other heroes, and the reality is that most of them don't. But despite this, he secretly saved the multiverse multiple times, and the tragedy of the situation is that some will never know.
That's rough, buddy.
The more detailed version though will probably help you understand why people really appreciate the character and want to see him on screen. Real name, Michael John Carter. He was born in 25th century Gotham City. He had a twin sister and they had a crappy dad who gambled away all the money. Despite this, he was a really good football player and went to Gotham University on a football scholarship, and he was good. He was a star quarterback, but unfortunately sometimes family sucks. His father came back into his life and asked him to lose games on purpose to help with his gambling addiction. He was caught and exposed, ruining his reputation. This leads him to getting a job as a night watchman at the Metropolis Space Museum. As a night watchman there, he's assigned a robot named Skeets, who acts as a security unit and has an AI. He has some pretty cool features including flight, voice projection, vast historical records of things that happened between the 21st and the 25th century, though at times this knowledge is questionable. probably due to the fact that things are constantly changing in the DC universe. He has some other powers, including a powerful energy blast. One of the key things is the fact that he's immune to reality and temporal manipulation. Now, one thing to note is that this museum has exhibits talking about old heroes and villains. Some of the artifacts in there are actually some devices that were used by heroes and villains. Booster gets Skeets to help him, and they steal some of the devices, including a Legion of Superheroes flight ring and Brainiac 5's force field belt, as well as Rip Hunter's time sphere, which he uses to go back to the 20th century to become a celebrity and a famous hero. Throughout his time in the 20th century, he becomes a member of the Justice League with former Blue Beetle Ted Kord, and he actually builds a corporation to hold all the money he got from sponsorships and brand deals. Despite this though, he still managed to have his company go bankrupt.
Repeatedly. It's a pattern of behavior. You're lazy. You're unprofessional, unfocused. Booster, you're the worst crime fighter I've ever known.
Also, he loses an arm at one point, has his suit completely destroyed, his best friend Ted Kord dies. Listen, he's had it pretty rough, but the more interesting part to me is the use of the Time Masters and his role in protecting the timelines. Although, to be fair, he has had plenty of stories aside from the time travel aspect, yet since it's the core of his origin, I feel like it would be a pretty good use in the series. One of the main supporting characters in a lot of his stories is the Time Master Rip Hunter, whose role is to basically protect the Time Scream, much like the TVA in the Loki series. Throughout the comics, Rip Hunter trains Booster in how to properly protect the flow of time. Booster at some points interacts with the Flashpoint and Future's End timelines, as well as encountering different versions of himself. Booster Gold is essentially the hero of time, and celebrated for his efforts to protect the timeline, except for the fact that most people don't remember his actions. That's where a lot of the duality of the character is. He plays the part of the fool in the present, despite his best intentions, but also has this whole other side to him that's deep and tragic.
Basil Carlo, an actor, applied a chemical called Renu on his face after a car crash that resulted in the irreparable damage to his face. Renu was not meant for human skin, but he was able to mold his scarred visage back to his former self. When Renu ran out, he broke into Daggett chemical factories until he was caught by Batman. He was asked to testify against the corrupt Daggett, but instead he tried to rob a police evidence locker. In the resulting scuffle, he was accidentally doused in dozens of cans of shattered Renu, turning him into the villain Clayface. Clayface is a powerful villain in Gotham City, able to transform his body into anything and blend into any crowd. His transformational powers allow for him not only to mimic other people, but turn his body into a living weapon, growing in size, changing his limbs into weapons like maces and giant hammers. Added to that, he's extremely strong and durable, able to withstand heavy damage even from some of the Justice League's heavy hitters. Matt Hagen's animated series origins are very similar. In fact, it seems as the DC Rebirth version of Carlo hold most of his stories from the animated series origins. In his initial appearance, Basil was a disgruntled actor who was replaced in the remake of his film. In an act of revenge, he donned the mask of the killer Clayface from one of his earlier films, which was reminiscent of the mask worn by Lon Chaney in Phantom of the Opera. He killed the actors in the order that they die in the movie, which seems like it was an inspiration for the plot for Scream 2.
Before the multiverse became a trend, we had What If and Elseworld comics, which were designed originally to answer those random questions that we had. Well, what if Jane Foster became Thor? What if Superman arrived in the Soviet Union instead of Kansas? And so many more. While being fun stories to read, it gave writers that freedom to really play around with the established characters without worry that it will affect the canon at that time. Some stories fit so well it pretty much becomes canon. Think The Killing Joke, a classic story that really stresses the fact that the events in the story are one of many possibilities, but it's now widely regarded and accepted by editors and fans alike. Others started as complete what-if situations and later were merged or retreaded in the official canon. Like Jane Foster, who I mentioned earlier, who became Thor in official Marvel Comics, and it really had long-term impacts, which eventually led to her appearance in Thor Love and Thunder. Whatever the reason or the outcome, writers have used this method as an outlet to bring some characters into different genres. And since I'm writing this now during Halloween season, and like I mentioned earlier, for all those people who can watch horror all year round, today we'll be going over 3 classic horror stories that exist outside of the DC canon that have some very different and alternate takes on characters. One takes 2 established icons and merges them together into one creepy story. Another that reworks a classic zombie trope into an epic that redefines many characters. And the first on the list has a fairly modern movie monster take on one of DC's heavy hitters. So, with all that being said, let's dive in. In terms of modern movie monsters, you have everything from the Xenomorphs in the Alien series to a slasher like J.C. Voorhees. But what makes things different with the Predator series is the nature of the monsters themselves. The Predator is not a singular monster, but rather the Predators are a group of aliens known as the Yautja, whose only goal is to become the universe's ultimate hunters, and they do this of course by hunting the strongest and most deadliest foes on the planets they land on. These could be dangerous wildlife or the deadliest warriors of the planets. These hunts can also be coming of age rituals or even just mass hunts. The beauty of the Predator stories as a franchise is that the characters don't always follow from story to story, and the setting can be totally different from one another and still work. In the first movie they were in a jungle, the next in the city, and they're not even bound by time, as one of the more recent versions had a Predator go up against Native Americans and early settlers. The Predator is no stranger to comics either, especially the crossovers. The most well-known has to be the Alien vs. Predator series, which has everything from comics to novels, and of course the movies where they fight the Xenomorphs from the Alien franchise on Earth. During the 90s though, comic crossovers was the thing. We got everything from DC vs. Marvel, Superman and Spider-Man, and everything in between. But one of the cooler ones was the Batman vs. Predator crossover. The series feels like a natural fit for both franchises, as these books were more grounded, focusing on Gotham and the Batman family, as opposed to appearances from other overpowered heroes like Superman, because then it would take the fun out of it. Superman fighting the Predator would be interesting, but it's hard to really make an argument for the Predator beating Superman by himself. So by taking that part of the DC out of the storyline, you get a grounded Batman story mixed with the action of a Predator movie. The multiple crossovers deal with the Predators coming to Gotham City to take on the best of the best within the city. In the first crossover, Batman is investigating the deaths of several people, including a boxer and some mobsters, which leads him to a near-deadly first confrontation with the Predator, with Batman barely escaping with his life. Recovering from his injuries, he builds another stronger batsuit to confront the Predator, and eventually beats it. The real magic of this series is that it really feels like a Predator movie. The art style is very stylistic, having this old school animation style which reminded me very much of the work done by artist Neil Adams, who worked on the Batman books during the late 60s and early 70s. Take that and combine that with the grittiness of, let's say, the Frank Miller aesthetic. Add a slow build with a great fight scene between the two, a plot that for the most part makes sense within the world of Batman and the world of Predators. In a live action setting, this story makes a lot of sense. A lot more sense than the Predator vs. Alien series in that there's very little setup needed, as the Predators know Gotham has some heavy hitters that can provide them with a good challenge. I feel a lot of crossovers spend so much more time trying to set up how and why these two franchises would come together in the first place, and that takes away from them. A lot of times there's plot holes or things that would be too convenient and easy just so they can get to a point where the characters meet. On the other hand, this series seemed to really integrate the lore of these two worlds effortlessly, while also not being the most complicated story to begin with, but really entertaining. For Predator fans and Batman fans, I think this will be a fun read for you guys.
No, you're hurting me! No!
So we all know about Dr. Frankenstein and his monster, or I'm just going to assume everyone at least has some vague idea about the character. The classic monster first appeared in Mary Shelley's novel titled Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus, released way back in 1818. The themes and ideas found in the Frankenstein story have bled into everything, from movies, TV shows, art, video games, and of course comics. Frankenstein and his monster has appeared in a lot of comics, everything from Marvel to DC to IDW, Dark Horse. DC has their own version of the monster within the canon who calls himself Frankenstein. He was part of the Seven Soldiers, Shade, and probably more well known for his time on the Creature Commandos. And for most of the time of his character, he's been a government secret agent who tries to save the world from weird and crazy stuff. This version is very cool and I like it a lot. And I have a whole video here that you can check out and learn more about him. But Frankenstein's monster has made other appearances in DC, including 2 stories under the Elseworlds banner. One in Batman Castle the Bat, which has Bruce Wayne becoming somewhat of a Dr. Frankenstein himself, experimenting with animal hybrids, bringing back to life his dead father. And this story does deserve a closer look, but the story I want to focus on and recommend to you guys is the Superman monster. The Superman monster is actually a prequel to another story called Batman Two Faces, which is basically a retelling of the Jekyll and Hyde story, set in the Victorian era but with Batman characters. The Superman monster is set in Bavaria and follows the story of Victor Luthor, a stand-in for Lex Luthor, who is dismissed by the scientific community for his unethical experiments. Luthor, not to take a loss, uses his lover by trying to marry her to use her wealth to fund his experiments. One night, after walking out of a party, he sees a spaceship fall from the sky. This ship is a Kryptonian ship that Kal-El was sent in, but the story differs a bit in that Kal didn't survive the trip. Luthor opens up the ship to find a baby skeleton. I mean, this is pretty bad to begin with, but now Luthor has gained access to all of Jor-El's knowledge, which was ingrained into the shuttle in order to educate Superman. Using this knowledge, of course, he does a bunch of unethical things. One, creating his own version of the monster. While a lot of what happens in the story aligns with the original Frankenstein story, one thing you may notice is that the revival tank that Luthor built is reminiscent of the Kryptonian birthing chamber and really reminds me of the one used in the DCEU when Doomsday was created and Superman was restored to life. I'm not sure if they use this particular story for their inspiration, but it's nice to see these Easter eggs that are reminiscent of a lot of the Superman lore. You get a lot of these nice touches, with the monster he creates becoming a Superman stand-in, as well as the appearance of the Bride of Frankenstein, and Luthor being Luthor, which adds up to a nice quick read that I recommend if you want a classic movie feel. But if you need something more modern that was written more recently, take a look at the next entry. This story takes the zombie trope and spins it in a really different way. Darkseid, after forever, finally gets his hand on the anti-life equation, but because this isn't Final Crisis and DC of course wouldn't rehash the storyline, the anti-life equation becomes corrupted when he tries to pull half of it out of Cyborg so that he can merge it with his half, but the process of the transfer and merging between digital and physical got screwy. This corruption changed the nature of the equation, which to be fair was bad news to begin with, but now it's worse and it infected Darkseid. But this is Darkseid, one of the most powerful characters in all the comics, and now he's a rage zombie. Darkseid basically rages through the universe, infecting everything in his path. Meanwhile, Cyborg, who was also infected, is sent back to Earth, and that virus begins infecting everybody on sight. Soon enough, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman do what they do best and try to save the world, but unfortunately for this Earth, they become infected. Superboy and Robin take on the mantles of their father. Luthor joins forces with the League to help evacuate survivors along with the Green Lantern Corps to take them to another planet dubbed Earth 2, not to be confused with the multiverse concept. Throughout the first series, it was assumed that there was no cure until the readers find out at the end that there's a cure after countless zombified heroes and people were killed. The follow-up sequels explore the cure, the meaning of legacy, but really explores every aspect of the DC universe, from space warfare to magic world-ending demons, and even a team-up with Brainiac. It really is a wonderful piece of work and had a solid writing. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think you guys will too.
Let's dive in and explore the wild world of Detective Chimp. Detective Chimp, also known as Bobo the Chimpanzee, first appeared in 1952 in the comic book Adventures of Rex the Wonder Dog. He quickly became popular among readers and was a regular in backup stories until 1959. After that, he pretty much disappeared until Crisis on Infinite Earths, which led to more regular appearances in the DC universe. In the comics, Bobo was trained by Fred Thorpe for a carnival act that involved answering detective-related questions using a combination of signals and rewards. The act gave the illusion that Bobo knew secrets about the audience. During this time, Bobo formed a strong friendship with Thorpe because he took care of him and gave him a better life than he had in the jungle. At some point, the pair traveled to Florida where Rex the Wonder Dog took Bobo to the Fountain of Youth. The Fountain of Youth is a mythical spring that grants immortality and enhanced intelligence to those who drink from it. Bobo drank from the fountain and gained the intelligence and abilities of a human detective, earning him the name Detective Chimp. Although this ended his career as a carnival act, he embarked on a new career as a detective. Detective Chimp has teamed up with some of the greatest heroes on the DCU over the years, including Batman and the Flash. He's also been a member of various teams such as the Justice League Dark and Shadow Pact. Detective Chimp is a highly intelligent and skilled detective in the DC universe. He has several abilities that make him stand out among other characters. Intelligence. Detective Chimp possesses vast knowledge in various subjects such as forensic science, detective work, and criminology, and has an IQ that is comparable to that of a human genius. Detective skills. He is an expert detective capable of solving complex crimes and puzzles with ease.
With a keen eye for detail, he is able to piece together clues that uncover the truth. Additionally, he is a master of the disguise and can blend in with different crowds and environments to gather information. Supernatural abilities. Detective Chimp acquired extraordinary powers when he drank from the Fountain of Youth. One of these powers is the ability to communicate with animals in their own language, as well as all human languages, whether spoken or written. Physical abilities. Detective Chimp's physical abilities include strength, agility, and speed, which he possesses as a chimpanzee. Additionally, he has a keen sense of smell and hearing that he uses for tracking down suspects and gathering evidence. Immortality. As a result of drinking from the Fountain of Youth, he became immortal and could not be harmed by most injuries or diseases. Detective Chimp is a powerful character in the DC universe due to his combination of abilities and detective skills. He is highly valuable as a team member and a challenging opponent for any enemy. Nevertheless, his association with the group Shadow Pact is one of the more recognizable aspects of his character. But before we get into that, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, hit that like button so even more people can take a look at what you're watching right now. But for now, let's get back to the video. During the Day Avengers storyline, the Spectre aimed to get rid of all magic. Detective Chimp decided to form a team called Shadow Pact with the help of some patrons from the Oblivion Bar, which included the Enchantress, Blue Devil, Ragman, and others. Over the years, Shadow Pact, led by Detective Chimp, faced and resolved many problems, but eventually they disbanded. After that, Bobo was chosen as the host of the Helmet of Fate, but he found its power to be too overwhelming and swiftly rejected it. After Flashpoint, he made occasional appearances, but didn't have a significant role until a few cameos in Dark Knight's Metal, where he was one of the survivors of the invasion. This led him to become the new owner of the Oblivion Bar. Following the Dark Knight's events, he became a prominent member of the rebirth version of the Justice League Dark, which includes Wonder Woman, John Constantine, Zatanna, Dr. Fate, Swamp Thing, and Man-Bat. Although Detective Chimp is not super well known, he is one of the more interesting characters in DC Comics. During his time with Shadow Pact and Justice League Dark, they really expanded the character and gave him a more prominent role in the overall DCU. Thanks for watching this video about Detective Chimp, one of the more obscure but beloved characters in the DC universe.
Batman, now you can...
So the next set of videos revolve around the Black Adam movie, but more so the characters in the movie. Also, don't give me too much shit for sounding so hopeful about this movie, as this was all before Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson blew it up in all our faces. That being said, there's some solid DC stuff here, mainly about the characters themselves: Black Adam, Isis, Hawkman, Atom Smasher, etc. So enjoy!
Batman from Hornby.
Black Adam is an interesting character for a couple reasons. Most well known for his association with Shazam and the Justice Society of America from DC Comics. Typically, he's seen as the opposite version of Shazam with the same power set, but his role has shifted over the years, with his character acting as a sometime villain and sometime anti-hero. Before going further, I think it's important to have some context for the character's origins. Shazam was a character formerly known as Captain Marvel and had a run of comic books in the 1940s under the company known as Fawcett Comics. Fawcett Comics was later bought by DC Comics, and the characters were integrated into the DC multiverse. Black Adam made one memorable appearance in the original run of Captain Marvel comics while it was still under Fawcett Comics. In this appearance, Black Adam was an ancient Egyptian named Teth Adam, chosen by the wizard Shazam, the same wizard that gave Billy his powers and allowed him to become Captain Marvel. In ancient Egypt, Teth becomes corrupted by his power and takes over Egypt. The wizard Shazam, angered by his action, renames him Black Adam. Not having the ability to strip him of his powers, he banishes him to a distant star. Black Adam, not being the type of person to give up, spends the next 5,000 years to get back to Earth. Upon arriving back to Earth, he meets the Wizard's new champion, Captain Marvel, and the Marvel family. For those Marvel fans out there, this version of Captain Marvel predates any version from the Marvel comics, but due to some rights issues and the avoidance of confusion, DC has begun using Shazam as the current namesake for the character. Upon coming back to Earth, Black Adam attempts to conquer the planet. While this is happening, he also manages to capture and gag Billy and Freddy, preventing them from calling out Shazam. Uncle Marvel sees this, and after getting an idea from the Wizard, tricks Black Adam into saying Shazam, and upon speaking this word, Black Adam reverts to human form, but unfortunately for him, he begins to age to 5,000 years and turns into a skeleton and dies. This was the last time he was seen in Fawcett Comics, but the character was later brought back in DC Comics reincarnated by Shazam villain Dr. Sivana. After the Crisis on Infinite Earths event, his origin was revised, with the present version of the human side of the character being a reincarnation of the original ancient Egyptian character, who receives the power from a scarab necklace that the Wizard used years ago to lock up Black Adam's power. In terms of power set, the Wizard derives the powers of his champions from the gods. Shazam, for instance, uses the Greek and Roman gods. S for the wisdom of Solomon, H for the strength of Hercules, A for the stamina of Atlas, Z for the power of Zeus, A for the courage of Achilles, M for the speed of Mercury. Black Adam, on the other hand, derives his power from the Egyptian gods, but with the powers between them being basically the same. S for the stamina of Shu, H for the swiftness of Horus, A for the strength of Aman, Z for the wisdom of Zehuti, A for the power of Aten, M for the courage of Mehen. Over the years, Black Adam's use in comics expanded greatly to include tenures on both the Justice League and the Justice Society of America, as well as times of villainy in the Legion of Doom, Injustice Society, Monster Society of Evil, Injustice League, and the Secret Society of Supervillains. One of the more modern aspects that have become a regular inclusion in his character was his own version of the Marvel family, including his wife Isis, Isis's brothers Osiris, and Sobek, a super smart humanoid crocodile who becomes a friend of the family. In addition to this, he is commonly seen as a leader for the fictional country's Conduct, which I know is going to be the focus of the new movie. Black Adam was originally from Conduct years ago during the ancient Egyptian time period. He decides to take over the country in the present day by overthrowing the current dictator. He was confronted by the Justice Society of America, but ultimately was left alone as long as he promised to stay within his borders. The new Black Adam film is set to introduce the characters from the DC Comics that many viewers have not seen before, including many members of the Justice Society like Hawkman, Cyclone, and Atom Smasher, in addition to the title character, Black Adam. One of the more interesting characters set to appear in the film is Adriana Tomas, aka Isis. Isis is a pretty cool character in terms of DC because it's one character that has a long history despite the lack of appearances in comics and film. DC has had a long history of TV shows and movies, including the Adam West Batman series, Shazam, Wonder Woman, Smallville, the Arrowverse, and the numerous Superman and Batman films. Included in this lineup was a live-action series from the 70s called The Secrets of Isis. The Secrets of Isis premiered in 1975 and was the first weekly female-led superhero show that actually predated shows like the Wonder Woman series and the Bionic Woman series. This show was focused on Adriana Tomas, a high school science teacher who comes in possession of a mystical amulet called the Tutmos Amulet, which after reciting an incantation allows her to transform into Isis.
A dual person, Andrea Thomas, teacher.
Almighty Isis.
And Isis, dedicated foe of evil, defender of the weak, champion of truth and justice,
giving her the powers to help those in need. The Secrets of Isis was a part of the block of television known as the Shazam Isis Hour, which focused on Captain Marvel, who also has a strong connection to Black Adam. This character was later reintroduced into the DC Comics universe, now known as Adriana Tomas. She was first seen in a 52 series of comic books as an enslaved Egyptian woman brought to Black Adam as a gift from Intergang. Black Adam released her and killed her captors. She was fearless and did not hesitate to tell Adam how he could change a country for the better, using his powers. They began traveling the country together to help people, including finding her kidnapped brother. Eventually, Black Adam has the Rock of Eternity to request Captain Marvel to give the power of the Amulet of Isis to Adriana. Upon speaking, "I am Isis," Adriana transforms into Isis, an incarnation of the goddess Isis, with similar powers to Black Adam and Shazam, like super strength, endurance, super speed, and flight, as well as some other powers unique to her, like healing abilities and control over nature like weather and flowers. Isis has mainly been used as a supporting member of storylines involving Black Adam. In the New 52, Adriana Tomas is a young woman who opposes the current regime in Conduct. Her brother joins a terrorist group in an effort to oppose the government, but is killed, prompting Adriana to resurrect Black Adam. As a character, I do think Isis can be part of a new generation of characters that DC can use to expand their universe, by offering more diversity with original characters as opposed to a retool of existing ones.
So who is Dr. Fate? That's usually the question I answer in these videos, but unlike some other characters I've explored, the answer isn't so simple with Dr. Fate, for a couple reasons, which I will get into in a second. I want to preface this with my goal for my recent series of videos. I know not everyone is aware of the long history of these characters, especially with DC. Many of these DC characters themselves have a 40-year plus history, and that's a lot. So when making these videos, I want to introduce the basics, enough to give you a sense of who these characters are, while leaving you with great stories that you can read and watch on your own. That's not to say in the future I won't do more in-depth deep dives, but I know how busy life can get, and I still want to provide these more self-contained videos for you guys as the audience. But why am I saying this, especially now? I mean, Black Adam had many appearances and stories I didn't talk about, and so did Atom Smasher. But Dr. Fate has appeared semi-regularly in DC Comics for decades, and in true DC fashion, there are multiple versions of the characters. But unlike some of the other characters, these versions are successors to one another, existing within the same Earth and continuity. Dr. Fate's history is complex and involved, so for the sake of this, I'll focus on the most famous version of the character, and the one that Pierce Brosnan will portray in a new film, that being Kent Nelson. Kent Nelson is the most well-known Dr. Fate, and first appeared in More Fun Comics in May of 1940 in his own self-titled comic strip. In 1920, Kent Nelson, along with his archaeologist father, Sven Nelson, investigate a temple in the Ur Valley of Mesopotamia. While exploring, Kent opens up the tomb of Nabu, which releases a toxic gas that kills his father Sven. Nabu, upon being released, feels sorry for Kent and begins to teach him in the way of magic. He ages Kent into a full-grown adult, and over the next 20 years trains him before finally granting him the Helmet of Nabu, the Amulet of Anubis, and the Cloak of Destiny. Using these items and his training, Nelson, now Dr. Fate, begins his crime-fighting career, setting up his base in Salem, Massachusetts, in what is sometimes called the Tower of Fate. Dr. Fate is a founding member of the Justice Society of America and has served on the team many times in addition to 10 years on the Justice League of America. Dr. Fate is one of the most powerful magic users in the DC universe. Oftentimes, he is compared to his Marvel counterpart, Doctor Strange, for that reason. He has a similar power set to that of Strange, including the mastery of magic, flight, healing abilities, and powers over certain aspects of nature. The artifacts he uses largely bolster his power, allowing him to open up a pocket dimension, communicate with the dead, as well as immortality and a fair bit of invulnerability. However, he is much weaker when not wearing the helmet. As far as Kent Nelson goes, he's nothing to sneeze at, as he is a trained doctor, an archaeologist, and due to the magic provided by Nabu, his body is at its peak in regard to his mental and physical abilities. Much like Strange, Dr. Fate is a core component of the magical side of DC Comics, often appearing in many of the crossover events, both in relation to magic, but also in many of the big universal events like the Crisis events. But unlike Doctor Strange, Dr. Fate has a dark side to his character in direct relation to his powers, specifically with his connection to Nabu. Earlier I mentioned that Nabu and Dr. Fate had a dark side to them, and let me clarify, it's not that either of these characters are villains, but rather, it's Nabu's tendency to take control of Nelson's body in order to accomplish his goals. But in order to understand this dynamic, it's important to know a little bit about Nabu, because I do think it's going to play a part in the way DC presents a character in a new movie. I mentioned earlier that Nabu was found in the tomb in Mesopotamia. That is because he's a Lord of Order. The Lords of Order are a group of deities who will do anything in their power to defeat the Lords of Chaos. Because of this drive to defeat chaos, Nabu is often seen as cold and uncaring of others in his pursuit of this goal. Due to this, one of the major aspects of Dr. Fate's character is that often Nabu will take over Nelson's body and gain total control of him, allowing him to walk the earth as he once did 4,000 years ago. The problem with this is that he does this often without the consent of Nelson, to the point that Nelson at times switches the use of half of the helmet in order to avoid this. Although Nabu is true in his attempt to battle the forces of evil, his methods are questionable at best. Yet, this duality is one of the more interesting aspects to the character, and I do hope that the new movie introduces this into the DCEU mythos. Like many other characters in the DCEU movies, Dr. Fate has been used in other media over the years. In fact, the Nelson version of Fate has appeared on many TV shows, both animated and live action, as well as a couple video games. He's made multiple appearances in the DC Animated Universe continuity and Superman the Animated Series, as well as Justice League the Animated Series, voiced by Oded Fehr, whom you guys might know from the Mummy series.
I told you to leave or die.
One of the more notable story arcs was in the Justice League Unlimited series, where he, Hawkgirl, Aquaman, and Solomon Grundy try to kill one of the old ones, Cthulhu, who is causing trouble on the Earth plane, but ends with a heartbreaking moment where Grundy dies. He appeared in many other non-DCAU series, including Batman Brave and the Bold, Young Justice, Justice League Action, as well as animated features including Justice League New Frontier and the recent Justice Society World War. He has appeared in several video games as well, including Injustice 2, DC Universe Online, Lego Batman 3 Beyond Gotham, and Lego DC Supervillain. As far as live action though, he's appeared in Smallville and the DC Universe series Stargirl as a member of the Justice Society of America and the Kent Nelson persona. Dr. Fate is one of those characters that, like Doctor Strange, could be used in bit parts and major parts in movies across the DCEU, even in scenes where heroes are looking for information or assistance in a case they're working on. Additionally, having Pierce Brosnan in the role really brings some gravitas to the characters that could connect with audiences both old and young. This is probably the character I'm most looking forward to seeing next to Black Adam, so I hope they do him justice and integrate him into future movies in the DCEU. In my Dr. Fate video, I went over some of my thought process behind these videos. In short, I want to provide you a story behind the character, enough so you know what you need to know, but not so much where it spoils storylines and comics that you guys may be interested in reading in the future. The reasoning is that some characters like Hawkman have a long and storied history that telling every aspect, including different versions and successors, would require a series of videos. For this reason, I'll be focusing on the version of the character set to appear in the movie. Carter Hall, like many of the other characters, have their origins rooted in ancient times. Black Adam was originally known as Teth Adam, and Nabu, who empowers Dr. Fate, were both present in the ancient times, as was Hawkman, but not in the same way that they were. Unlike Nabu or Adam, the present-day Hawkman is a reincarnation of the ancient Egyptian prince Khufu. Khufu and his lover Shayera encountered the wreckage of the Thanagarian spaceship. For those who don't know, Thanagar is another planet that is sometimes referred to as Hawkworld. Hawkworld is a planet filled with humanoids who are in possession of Nth Metal. Nth Metal is a powerful metal that possesses the ability to negate gravity. This is the metal that Khufu and Shayera came in contact with during their interaction with the crashed spaceship. After some time, a dagger was crafted from this metal. Hatset, one of Khufu's priests, stabs him and Shayera with the dagger. They die, but due to the effects of the Nth Metal in the dagger, it creates a reincarnation cycle. Over the years, they are reincarnated many times until the 1940s, where they are reincarnated as Carter Hall and Shayera Hall. These two then become founding members of the Justice Society of America and the All-Star Squadron. Earlier, I spoke about the Nth Metal. The Nth Metal that was contained in the spaceship that Carter Hall encountered when he was Prince Khufu. Due to his possession of the Nth Metal, he can fly, but he also has wings that allow for greater control of his power. The metal also imbues the wearer with accelerated healing, increased speeds, and protection in extreme environments. For Hawkman, he has a belt and mace made from the Nth Metal. Due to his experience in his countless reincarnations, he's also a natural leader, a strong warrior, and has an immense amount of tactical knowledge. In terms of his personality, he has strong conservative views, quick-tempered, and little issue with killing, but in recent stories, this has changed due to a deeper understanding of history and spirituality. Hawkman has appeared in numerous stories over the years, and has had many stints in both the Justice Society of America and the Justice League comic books. Over the years, just like Dr. Fate, he's made appearances in other media, including live-action appearances in Smallville, the Arrowverse, as well as animated appearances in the Justice League Unlimited series, Batman Brave and the Bold. He's also appeared in animated films such as Justice League The New Frontier, Superman Batman Public Enemies, and Justice Society World War II. Additionally, he's made a couple appearances in video games as a playable character, including Lego Batman 3 Beyond Gotham, as well as the mobile version of the Injustice Gods Among Us game. Hawkman is one of the more storied characters in DC Comics, and a standard on the Justice Society of America. Black Adam is a stable character in the DC universe. He's appeared in numerous storylines over the years, including big events, crossovers, and his own stories. But the reality is that he and many of the other characters in the film, including Cyclone, are relatively unknown to mainstream audiences. What's cool about this film is that this could be DC's version of the Guardians of the Galaxy, using it as a way to introduce characters that aren't big names to more mainstream audiences. Cyclone is one of these characters, and her appearance in the movie is the first time audiences will see the character in any form outside of comic books. Cyclone first appeared in an issue number 1 of Volume 3 of the Justice Society of America. For those unaware, the Justice Society of America, or JSA for short, is a precursor to the Justice League and appeared in the 40s. Many of the characters are older alternative versions of modern characters, including Flash and Green Lantern, as well as some other characters who are less well known, including Cyclone and Atom Smasher. Cyclone is actually a legacy character in a sense that she is the granddaughter of an honorary member of the Justice Society of America, which is Red Tornado. But probably not the Red Tornado many of you DC fans know. DC, like Marvel, has multiple heroes with the same name, which can be retcons, reimaginings, or simply in-universe legacy characters, kind of like how the mantle of Spider-Man and Robin are passed down to other characters. Maxine Hunkel grew up idolizing the JSA. When she was 6, she was kidnapped by scientist T.R. Morrow, who created the robotic version of Red Tornado. T.O. Morrow is a very interesting character in the DC universe, and if you want a video dedicated to him, let me know in the comments below. Morrow infects Maxine with nanobites that become the source of her powers. Forward some years later, 19-year-old Maxine is a Harvard student and a huge fan of The Wizard of Oz and its musical counterpart, Wicked. Due to her extreme intelligence, she often feels outcasted by her peers, leading to bouts of depression. Upon reaching adulthood, she begins to manifest her powers, leading to several incidents including a sneeze destroying her grandmother's garage and her waking up inside a tornado 500 feet off the ground. She later joins the ranks of the Justice Society of America as one of their new training recruits, officially debuting in issue number 3 of Volume 3 of the JSA comics. She is seen as a regular in the JSA but disappeared along with the rest of the Justice Society after they disappeared during the New 52, but they all returned during the Doomsday Clock series. Her power allows her manipulation of the wind, giving her the ability to conjure up whirlwinds, cyclones, and powerful bursts of air, and of course, the ability to fly. She later revealed that she can also control sound waves, allowing her to gather and send out sound waves. Cyclone is a seldom used character, and that might just be what DC needs for its movie lineup. DC fans love their lore and characters. This love runs deep, and there's a fan for every hero and villain in the DC multiverse. But Cyclone is a character that is just waiting to be used more, and her appearance in the movie would allow the character to be fleshed out more. In addition to that, her appearance will also help to introduce some lesser known characters and factions within DC. I think in terms of movies, the introduction of Cyclone and the rest of the JSA would do wonders for the DC cinematic universe and give it a leg to stand on while waiting for a Justice League movie. In terms of the Justice Society, many members of the team are Golden Age heroes like Wildcat, Hourman, the original Green Lantern, and the original Flash, while others are descendants of the heroes like Stargirl, Jade, and Obsidian. Atom Smasher's origins are quite different actually. Atom Smasher, also known as Albert Rothstein, is the grandson of Cyclotron. Cyclotron, real name Terry Curtis, was a scientist in the 30s and 40s who was kidnapped by DC villain Ultra Humanite. Humanite experimented on him and exposed him to radiation, which gave him his superpowers. He was used by the villain to fight against another supergroup called the All-Star Squadron. Now I realize that this is a lot of information to take in, but it's about to start making sense. One of the heroes that Curtis fought against was called Atom, whose exposure to Cyclotron's powers also gave him his own superpowers. Atom served as an inspiration to Rothstein and was his godfather. Cyclotron later tried to redeem himself by taking Humanite into an atmosphere and blowing himself up. Atom later remodeled his suit after the late Cyclotron. Curtis's daughter had a son, Albert, who inherited his powers from his grandfather. These powers included super strength, increased stamina and speed, as well as durability. One of the more well-known powers is his ability to grow in size, similar to how Ant-Man grows in the Marvel comics and movies. However, unlike Ant-Man, he can grow to 60 feet with little effort. due to the fact that his bones and muscles break and reform as he grows in height. Added to that, his strength and body density grow in proportion to his height. That being said, even at his base form he is pretty formidable, with some comics depicting him standing at 7 foot 6 inches and with super strength. Albert began his superhero journey using another alias, Nukan. As Nukan, he fought in the superhero team known as Infinity Inc. Infinity Inc. has a long history, which I don't plan on going over at the moment, but they're basically the Teen Titans of the Justice Society, as most of the members are kids or sidekicks of the JSA. During his time in this group, Albert had a mohawk haircut. He later joined the Justice League and formed a bond with fellow member Obsidian, who is also the son of the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott. During the reformation of the Justice Society, Albert was invited to join and change his identity to Atom Smasher in honor of his godfather, the original Atom. See, I told you all that backstory would make sense. He also makes fun of his old mohawk, which is a pretty cool callback to his time as Nukan. During this time, we start seeing the cracks in Atom Smasher's character, as an incident with his mother leads to the death of the villain Extent, which labels him a murderer and brews distrust among his teammates. The next bit is probably the lead into what we'll see in the new Black Adam movie. At some point in this run of JSA Comics, a reformed Black Adam joins a team. Initially, Atom Smasher refuses to believe that Adam has changed, but things start to change when Black Adam sympathizes with Atom Smasher as he justifies the actions that led to the death of the villain Extent. They form a friendship that leads to the death of another villain, Cobra, and also the death of the Dictator of Conduct. The death of Conduct's leader is important as it's the lead-in for Black Adam to take over the country. The interesting part of Atom Smasher in relation to Black Adam is that their friendship continues beyond this, and the comics show a continued support between the two. I do hope that the DCEU shows this aspect of their relationship, because I do think the friendship, at least on Atom Smasher's end, really gives a character an arc and growth throughout his appearances as he deals with dueling ideals between those of the Justice Society and Black Adam. Something I want to note is that although this is the first appearance in the movie for Atom Smasher, he has appeared in other things before, such as the Justice League Unlimited series and the Justice League Animated series, specifically during an episode where the JLA meets the Justice Guild of America, which were based on the JSA. As far as live action though, Albert Rothstein did appear in a Flash episode for the CW series, portrayed by professional wrestler Adam Copeland, which some of you may know as the ultimate opportunist Edge from WWE. The series introduced a villainous version of the character from Earth 2. Atom Smasher here kills his Earth 1 counterpart and is eventually killed when he attacks the Flash. Smasher later tells Barry that Zoom sent him to kill him. This appearance was pretty cool, even though it had nothing to do with the history of the character in comics, but keeping characters like this in bit parts in TV shows and cartoons is important as it creates interest from audiences.
And let's begin.
DC Comics plays host to many unique and diverse characters, from well-known characters like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, to some unique and relatively obscure characters. Prez is another one of these characters. Relatively modern in comparison to some of the other characters I have presented before, he is one of the more original concepts in terms of design, origin, story, and premise. Prez tells the story of the first teenage president of the United States, and as crazy and offbeat and weird as that sounds, it's a concept that works. Perhaps it was too ahead of its time, as it included political scandals, race issues, a diverse cast of characters, and progressive ideas. Despite not being a superhero, he also faced some typical superhero villains like robots, vampires, and werewolves. Before I talk about Prez becoming president, I do want to take a look at the creative team behind the character. The artist was Jerry Grandinetti, who worked on an assortment of DC comics in the 40s and 50s, focusing on wars, including, but not limited to, All-American War, Our Army at War, Star-Spangled War Stories, and many others. Some of his more well-known works include his work on Will Eisner's beloved series Spirit, while Grandinetti served as penciler and inkler for Prez. He co-created the character with sometime collaborator Joe Simon. Joe Simon is a well-known commodity in comic books, but to those who may not know, he was the creator of Captain America, alongside Jack Kirby, perhaps less famous than his counterparts Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster of Superman, who are synonymous with the character in terms of its history, but nonetheless he is very important. His work on the character set the tone for writers to come. The team of Kirby and Simon was a consistent and profitable team whose work sold millions of comics. So Prez, full name Prez Rickard, was a teenager in the town of Steadfast, which is famous for its clocks. When I say clocks, I mean they literally have hundreds upon hundreds of clocks. Problem is, none of these clocks are synchronized, which makes it increasingly difficult for the townspeople to tell what time is accurate. So what does Prez do? He begins the painstaking task of fixing all the clocks one by one, and eventually completes the task, which brings him praise from the citizens of Steadfast, as well as the attention of one Boss Smiley. Boss Smiley is a shady businessman, whose face is stretched and twisted to look like one of those smiley face button pins, which is reminiscent of the Watchmen comic covers. Smiley decides to convince Prez to run for senator and eventually president after Congress passed an amendment allowing him to be eligible for president, unlike the real world, which has an age requirement of 35. Boss Smiley intended to influence and control Prez, but after meeting Eagle Free, a Native American, Prez broke free of Boss Smiley's control and continued to run for president. As president, Prez surrounds himself by many of his trusted allies, including his mother as vice president, his sister as secretary, and Eagle Free as a director of the FBI. During this run of comics, he encounters some of the weird things I mentioned earlier, as well as more normal presidential stuff, including threats from other politicians, clashing ideas on policies, and corrupt businessmen. Simon uses Prez as a vehicle for presenting the idealistic ideas of the boomer generation during the late 60s and early 70s. One of the more interesting things about this comic is that it presented very progressive ideas, including a strong stance on gun control, which echoes the sentiments of many people nowadays. Presently, this was a heavy topic, but perhaps it was even more volatile when issued during the time which was shown in the comic, as the arc had Prez deal with an assassination attempt in response to his actions. An interesting character that Prez faces off with was the leader of the right-wing militia, led by the great-great-great-great-great-great-grandnephew of George Washington, the country's first president. There was a story involving the Watergate scandal that was never published, where he cleared Washington DC of bugs, including electronic bugs as well as actual bugs. Prez did make another appearance in Neil Gaiman's iconic series of Sandman, where he is portrayed as a Jesus-like figure with Boss Smiley representing Satan in this allegorical tale. He made sporadic appearances in other comics and some media, including an appearance in the DC Multiversity guidebook as a resident of Earth 47, and an appearance on the TV show Batman, the Brave and the Bold, as the president 50 years in the future. A new version of the character was created in 2015, written by Mark Russell. This time, a teenage girl named Beth Ross is elected president via Twitter in 2036. The cool part about this one is that Prez actually becomes vice president to help her navigate through the trials and tribulations of a teenage presidency. Prez is one of those characters where I think it deserves a good run, maybe even on a digital platform. It's a chance for DC Comics to explore political and social issues in the country without really risking more marketable characters like Batman and Superman. He did show up on a movie poster in the background shot of the Stargirls TV series, probably just as a small Easter egg deal, but with the way superhero television shows and movies are being produced, we might see Prez back in office sooner than later.
Superman is notable for a lot of reasons. The first real superhero, the first use of a proper dual identity, and unlike the heroes that came before him, he was really well developed. But the issue is that he had so many superpowers that it nearly made him unbeatable. This created a problem for writers because even his everyday villain of the week stories, the villains there needed to be somewhat capable and much more powerful than the average person. Enter DC's Atomic Skull, who's become one of Superman's more notable C-list villains. So join me as we shed some light on this villain, whose only fault really is just being a villain for the Man of Steel.
Check it out.
Hey guys, this is Dan on Gkanthology, and for this video I want to get back into working on my character focused videos. I usually tend to focus on the weird characters in the DC's magical side, and more recently, some of Batman's villainous alternate versions, but for this video I want to focus on a Superman villain that doesn't get too much attention, the Atomic Skull. But why the Atomic Skull, you ask? Well, there are a couple reasons. The easy one is that I opened up my DC encyclopedia to a random page and picked the Atomic Skull. But the other reason is that I want to explore some of the weirder and more obtuse Superman villains. Everyone raves about Batman's rogues galleries or Spider-Man's rogues, and the reasoning is quite simple. Villains have much more depth when compared to other heroes' villains. Some of the villains are mundane and monster of the week, and more accurately, they're filler villains. They fill in the gaps between larger stories and at times can be a one-shot story, but rarely does a full storyline revolve around them. as opposed to classic villains like the Joker or Green Goblin, who can span multiple issues or larger crossovers. Added to that, these characters are so well developed that at times they can be featured in their own stories or expand further and become entirely their own, like how Venom evolved from wanting to revenge on Spider-Man to the King in Black storyline, which made Venom and his story a core aspect of the larger Marvel universe. Some Superman villains have this effect, like Lex Luthor, Brainiac, or Doomsday, but arguably a fair amount of his villains fall into the filler category more often than not. And that's not because they're uninteresting characters. In fact, some of these villains have really great backstories, like Metallo or Parasite, but they tend to show up after their initial appearances in villain team-ups or as henchmen for other more important villains. The reality is that the only fault of these villains have is that they are tied to Superman himself. Superman is near unbeatable, and it's difficult to really find someone believable and compelling enough who is not overly powerful in some way to be on the same level as him. This is a Superman problem because even relatively powerful individuals are average in comparison to Superman. This brings us to the Atomic Spotlight. So, who is the Atomic Skull? Well, as any DC fan knows, there's usually multiple versions. This falls into pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths, post-Crisis, New 52, and now the DC Rebirth, and so on. Thankfully for this video and my sanity, we only have 2 versions of the character to go over. So this video shouldn't be too complicated. Surely I won't regret any of this. Before the Crisis on Infinite Earths, Albert Michaels worked for Star Labs but was also working for the criminal organization Skull. Michaels had a medical condition which led him to having seizures that would escalate in intensity, eventually leading to his death unless he took corrective action. Some real-world research shows that the condition called sudden unexpected death in epilepsy, or SUDEP, can cause death in patients who suffer from epilepsy. And this can happen without any reasonable explanation, which some research estimates is the reason for 8 to 17% of seizure deaths, and for patients that do not respond to regular treatment, they have roughly a 50% increased chance of dying from this condition. While I'm not sure whether this had anything to do with his creation or his backstory, it does add an interesting motivation for his later actions. While at Star Labs, he would smuggle tech to Skull, where they intended to use it in an effort to defeat Superman. During a conflict with Metallo and Superman, Michael's identity as a corporate spy was revealed, forcing him to flee. After this, Skull offered him a solution for his condition through the use of a neural implant powered by radium, which was created in order to control his seizures. When he was implanted with a device, shortly later it stopped working and had the side effect of externalizing his seizures, giving him the ability to project the bioelectricity from his epileptic brain into electric blast. Using this ability, he overthrows the Skull organization and becomes a new leader, focusing his efforts on defeating Superman. This plan didn't go well though, as Superman thwarted his scheme and put him in a correctional facility. The prison he was sent to was designed to use a villain's power against them to power their own cells. In the case of Atomic Skull, his bioelectricity channeled through a helmet powered the security of his cell. Atomic Skull would break out of prison a couple more times and make a few appearances, including a crossover with The Flash and another instance where he had to fight Superman and Man-Bat. His last known appearance in the pre-52 era of comics was in the lead up to the Infinite Crisis, where he tried to convince a gang of teenagers to detonate a chlorine gas bomb in Metropolis, but was defeated by the Birds of Prey. Comics number 670 in 1991. He was a university student whose metagene was activated during an alien invasion. A metagene is sort of like DC's answers to mutant, and usually is a quick and easy explanation as to why someone gets powers. Unlike the X gene, which tends to activate during puberty, the metagene is more like writer's choice, such as times during trauma, exposure to weird stuff, or in Martin's case, the alien invasion. Martin was transformed into a radiation-seeking monster with a flaming skull, and decided to take the name of the Atomic Skull based on an old hero from a movie serial he used to watch when he was younger. But he did this not knowing that there was another Atomic Skull around. That being said, the Albert Michaels version disappeared for a bit during this time, and the Martin version became the primary version of Atomic Skull, which appeared in several animated shows and movies including the Justice League Unlimited series, Superman vs. the Elite. The version of Skull tends to be the one people see more often. After acquiring his powers, he attacks Superman, seeing him as the villain and himself as the hero. This was during the time Superman had his electric powers, and so in his mind he saw Superman as the evil Dr. Electron, which was the villain in the movie serial where Martin got the name of the Atomic Skull from.
So let's start with the New 52. After an editorial decision to basically restart the DC universe in order to let new readers come in without all the baggage, Flashpoint was turned into a crisis-like event that reshaped the long-standing characters of DC with a more modern characterization. Atomic Skull was reintroduced in the first Action Comics annual of the new era in a backup piece where we learned that this universe's Atomic Skull was a Star Lab scientist whose jealousy got the best of him. He was involved with a co-worker who he loved deeply, but when he saw her dancing with another co-worker, he ended up killing her and burying her in a shallow grave. 'Cause that's the thing to do. Anyway, sometime later he was working on an experimental Star Lab submarine that crashed due to a blast of nuclear energy, which he was also exposed to. Shipwrecked on the island, he found that he can emit nuclear blasts from his mouth, which he used to protect himself from predators on the island. Eventually, after repeated use, his skin and muscles literally peeled off his face, exposing the skull, leading him to calling himself the Atomic Skull, and becoming a regular Superman villain much like his pre-crisis counterpart. Eventually he reforms and starts working for good with instances of helping Superman and other heroes like Green Lantern. Fun fact, this little introduction had no dialogue, but was rather just panels of art telling a story coordinated by screenwriter Max Landis. Landis, if you remember, wrote scripts for the movie Chronicle as well as American Ultra. Landis also happens to be the son of movie director John Landis, who directed classics like Animal House,
Boone, it's not gonna be an orgy. It's a toga party.
and An American Werewolf in London.
I know. A monster.
Some of you may remember his video on YouTube where he summarized the editorial decision and the story behind the death and return of Superman storyline. He was also hired to pitch a modern version of the storyline that was intended to be a limited series like the New 52, but was cancelled due to scheduling conflicts. During an interview with Comic Vine, he was asked which version of the Skull this is, and he responds, "Yeah, I'm sort of doing a new version of the guy, and I definitely see using the Al name." This is where the confusion starts for me because I can't really find any proof from DC of who this version of the character is supposed to be. And before you all tell me that I have no idea what I'm talking about, I literally went through all the comics he appeared in. But hey, if I'm wrong, let me know. So first things first, I did a search on DC.com. And guess what? Nothing. I guess they couldn't be bothered to clear things up. The next thing would be to look at my DC encyclopedia. And there's been 2 editions since Flashpoint, including one after DC Rebirth. And they all point to Joseph Martin being in the New 52 version of the character that seems to be an amalgamation of the 2 pre-Flashpoint versions. In fact, in Action Comics Volume Number 2, Issue 32, Skull comes in conflict with Steel, who identifies him as Martin. Okay, clear cut, it has to be Martin, what are you talking about? Get over with, move on. Until you get to the Superwoman series, where Steel here seems to be a common factor, but he mentions Michaels by name, indicating that the Atomic Skull is the Albert version. One thing to note here is that there's a difference in character design which kinda helps. The big bulky Atomic Skull looks to be Martin, and the more slimmed down version is presumably Albert Michaels. This is fine, until you get to Teen Titans issues 20 and 33 of the 6th volume, where you clearly see a slimmed down Atomic Skull similar to the Albert design locked up by Robin. Later on, you see Robin looking at a monitor with all the villains, and it identifies Skull as Joey Marino, aka Joe Martin or Joseph Martin. Not done yet, and if you followed me up to this point, thanks. I'd like you to hit that like button and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more of my work because you can enjoy more random videos like this one. Now, in issue 9 of the Batman Superman series, Atomic Skull shows up again, this time controlled by Ultra Human Knight and implanted with a detonation device which catches the attention of Batman, who is able to identify him as the Albert Michaels version, and tries to help him since Atomic Skull at this point is pretty much reformed, or should be anyway. But before Batman could help, Atomic Skull blows up in front of Batman and in the middle of Gotham. Don't ask me how Batman survived, because the answer is and will always be because he's Batman. But the storyline is interesting and even has Batman being turned into an Atomic Skull version of himself, which is pretty cool. The last piece of evidence is a blurb from the McFarlane line of DC Multiverse comics. 1. The Atomic Skull looks more like the Albert Michaels version, but here's a blurb. Atomic Skull, real name, Joseph Martin. While on an experimental Star Lab submarine, scientist Joseph Martin was exposed to nuclear energy. Shipwrecked on a desert island, He survived by releasing deadly nuclear blasts from his mouth. His skin and muscles literally peeled off, inspiring him to create the supervillain for hire persona Atomic Skull. He regularly clashed with Superman both alone and with criminals such as Major Disaster, the Royal Flush Gang, and in recent times, Martin reformed fighting criminals with the Metropolis Special Crimes Unit, Superwoman, and the Teen Titans. So is it an editorial mistake? Maybe they just don't give a damn. But the problem is, I think writers just forgot which is which and just used whatever name they remembered. Argument could be said that when the DC Rebirth was done that both versions came back. But that's a cop-out due to poor writing and planning considering the way the appearances were managed. That's not to say he's a bad character. He could easily be the focus of a movie and a future Superman movie or a Superman adjacent character film. Who knows? He's still pretty interesting and definitely one of those villains that people tend to forget about unless you see him on a panel or anime series, because it's only until then you remember that he actually exists. But this is a common problem with some Superman villains like Metallo or Parasite. Although, when they are used correctly, they can be pivotal to plot points like in the Batman-Superman storyline that I described earlier. That being said, thanks for watching, but for now, take care and have an awesome day. I appreciate you guys watching. If you want to see more about DC, check out this video on the Grim Knight. And if Ninja Turtles is your thing, check this video out. It's that time of year, and for many, that means time with family, celebrations, or whatever other yearly traditions people have for themselves. DC Comics over the years have created many holiday specials in comics, and yes, some are corny, some are outdated, but some really have something about them that people still talk about to this day. And for the first video of my 2-part Christmas special, I'll be looking at the DC classic, Yes Tyrone, There Is a Santa Claus. Christmas has been a tradition in DC Comics dating back to some of the earliest holiday stories, including Comic Cavalcade, issue number 9, featuring some members of the Justice Society, released all the way back in 1944. That being said, more recently in the past 2 decades, DC has been releasing some individual Christmas stories in some mainline comics, like Green Lantern and Harley Quinn, but for the focus of this video, we're going to look at the yearly holiday specials, specifically DCU Infinite Holiday Special released in 2006. A couple things to note. This is following the Infinite Crisis event that rebooted some of the characters and brought back some long dead characters including Jason Todd, so some of these stories feature character changes that occur there. The special itself features several stories, including a Green Lantern story where the villainous Hector Hammond forces Hal to relive memories of his dad, thinking it would ruin Christmas, but Hal stopped Hammond, with Hammond saying, "Oh Hal, I knew I could ruin your Christmas, if I put my mind to it." And Hal replying, "Not even close, Potato Head, unless by ruining Christmas you meant forcing me to relive some wonderful moments with my father." Most of these stories amount to these little moments, with some of them existing outside the DC continuity like other Elseworld stories. The rest of the issue has some stories featuring the Shadow Pact, Shazam, Supergirl, Flash, and Batwoman. But the one that everyone remembers is the Superman story, Yes Tyrone, There Is a Santa Claus, which at first glance is an unassuming story, but I think for a holiday story it's quite nice and gives you that warm fuzzy feeling and a bit of fun.
Looks like we're experiencing technical difficulty. But don't worry, folks. We're still on the air.
But before we get into the story, I want to say thanks for watching the video. Hit that like button if you're enjoying what you're seeing, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss my next video. With that said, let's get back to the story. The story starts out like any other Christmas story, with a letter about Santa. A young boy sends a letter to the Daily Planet. Dear Daily Planet, is there a Santa Claus? My friend Billy says there isn't. He says Santa Claus is for babies. He says it's all made up and big kids know better. That's not true, is it? Can reindeer really not fly? Is nobody checking if I'm good or bad? Is it all a big lie? I'm asking you because my daddy says everything in your paper is true, except the part about the moon landing. Yours truly, Tyrone Jenkins III. Now at this point, I will forgive a bunch of things, in part because 1, it's a Christmas story, and 2, it seems to be set in the 40s and 50s. The next panel we have Clark Kent, Perry White, and Lois Lane reading the letter,
Perry tells Clark immediately to get working on editorial that's heartwarming. I want it to touch me, but not in a bad way. Got it? He tells Olsen to find out where Tyrone Jenkins is, and he tells Lois, despite being their #1 reporter, to get him coffee. But Perry, I'm your #1 reporter. You bet you are, dollface. Cream, 2 sugars. Is it sexist? Yeah. Is it demeaning? Definitely. But it's presented in a way as to establish a setting and time without having to literally say when this is happening. Added to that, the clothing and style, and Olsen as Superman's sidekick encouraging Clark to take action as the Man of Steel, this pretty much puts it in a setting during the earlier run of the Action Comics. We shift over to the Fortress of Solitude, where Clark, in a Santa outfit with his signature Superman logo on the chest, is getting presents ready to show Tyrone that Santa does exist by visiting his house on Christmas Eve. While looking over the house, someone shows up to stop Superman, and to the reader's surprise, it's Batman, where you get some of the best dialogue ever. Batman chastises Superman for dressing in a Santa costume, that he's a symbol and he should take himself more seriously. Superman says, restoring a child's sense of wonder, teaching him that the world can be a magical place. Batman responds in the most ridiculous way possible. Yeah. Well, my parents taught me a different lesson. Lying in the alley. Twitching. What? And Superman is funny enough to just roll his eyes, and probably having heard this from Batman so many times, yet Superman takes Batman's advice and flies away. He is a symbol for people, and maybe dressing up as Santa when he could be helping others, including mentioning that he should do something about the whole Middle East, a little topical, as during the time that this book was published we were in the middle of the Iraq War. As he's about to leave, he says that he may as well leave the presents only to find Batman himself dressed as Santa. These kids are saying thank you to Bat Santa, and Superman looks at him, and in a twist, we get one of the best panels ever drawn, with Superman punching Bat Santa. The kids are shocked, and a title saying season's greetings are on top of the page. It is a perfect way to end a wacky story like this. I can see why many still consider this a classic. It manages to fit so many little moments in its few pages with holiday cheer. You should be able to find this issue on DC's digital comic service if you want to read it for yourself. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Did you guys enjoy it, or is it overrated? Christmas has been a tradition in DC Comics dating back to some of the earliest holiday stories, including Comic Cavalcade issue number 9, featuring some of the members of the Justice Society, released all the way back in 1944. That being said, more recently, in the past 2 decades, DC has been releasing some individual comic stories in some mainline comics, like Superman and Batman. But for the focus of this video, we're going to look at the Green Lantern Holiday Special, focused on the Orange Lantern of Avarice, Larfleeze. Released in the 2010 Christmas season, this book details the story of Agent Orange finding out about Christmas and Santa Claus. Some might wonder why this story exists in the first place and why it's well remembered. To be honest, it's all because of Larfleeze. Larfleeze was created by well-known DC writer Jeff Johns as the primary wielder of the orange ring in the emotional spectrum, representing greed or avarice. He's an alien who's said to be several billion years old. When he was a kid, he was taken from his parents and enslaved. During this time, he experienced the worst parts of people that started to affect his personality, leading him to become a criminal after his escape. Eventually, he found the power ring in a temple, and in an agreement with the Guardians, in exchange for a box containing the fear entity Parallax, the Guardians allowed Larfleeze and another thief to keep the orange ring. The 2 thieves fought to the death, and Larfleeze became the only bearer of the orange ring. He seldom lets anyone use the power aside from himself, and wants it all for him. Due to the nature of the orange spectrum, he's naturally greedy and consumed by this. After the Brightest Day storyline, he has somewhat of a truce with the Lanterns and takes a place on Earth to live. But before we get into the story, I want to say thanks for watching the video. Hit that like button if you're enjoying what you're seeing, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss my next video. With that said, let's get back to the story. While on Earth, he learns of Christmas and Santa Claus, and naturally, his inner greed flares up and he begins to only see the commercial side of Christmas, and is ready with a big Christmas tree, milk and cookies, just for Santa to come and drop off his gifts. There are some fun parts in the comic aside from the story,
including a recipe for Christmas cookies and a cutout to make an ornament. On Christmas morning, he finds no gifts and is outraged. I made my list. I put up the lights and stockings and the strange offerings I've been told he demands. I even built this cabin to house my presents and a chimney to signal him I'm here. Where is he? He sees a Christmas parade on television that has a Christmas Santa and begins attacking every Santa in sight, terrorizing the city as he goes. Eventually, he heads to the North Pole in a fit of rage, trying to melt the ice there. Hal Jordan confronts him to see what is happening. After a brief explanation, Hal explains that Santa isn't real, and that the Christmas spirit doesn't come from getting gifts, but by giving. Hal helps Larfleeze give out gifts from his mountain of possessions, but Larfleeze doesn't feel the Christmas spirit and is still concerned with the gifts. Hal tells him, "Do yourself a favor, Larfleeze. Look at that list. Look at it close, and ask yourself, do I really need it?" In the next page, we see Larfleeze looking over the list, and his eyes looks over the line, "My family," and he proceeds to sleep by the fireplace as he thinks about what's really important to him. This is a fun story that has a charm of holiday specials, and uses a character notorious for their greed as a way to tell a tale of growth and charm. There are definitely some fun moments, including his attacks on every Santa he sees. Even the dig at the commercialization of Christmas is pointed out, but not thrown in your face in an overly political way. But I think for me, it was the fact that Larfleeze was so dedicated to the fact that Santa Claus was real and fought so hard about that belief that made this story really entertaining. It's definitely something I could see as a full-blown animated special in the future. The characters are perfect for it, and the concept is just crazy enough to work. Harley Quinn, in the last few years, has exploded in popularity, growing from Joker's sidekick and lover to a strong character in her own right. The crazy part to me is that she's essentially become what Deadpool is to Marvel, and that although she's not a primary character in terms of major storylines, she has a strong presence in the overall DC universe, with her own comic storylines that often interact with many of the major players in DC, as well as being a member of the Suicide Squad. But more important than that is her importance to the fanbase. Aside from being one of the biggest overall movers in terms of comic book sales, she's a regular costume during Halloween and Comic Cons. The last con I went to were full of Deadpools and Harley, which some would roll their eyes at, but I think it's awesome to have a character that speaks to so many people. Unlike many DC characters, Harley's origins are quite different in that she was originally created for an animated television series long before appearing in DC Comics. On September 11th, 1992, Harley first appeared in the episode Joker's Favor as one of Joker's henchpersons before being fully realized in a later episode. She was initially going to appear in one episode, but the writers ended up increasing her role and adding many more of her well-known character aspects, including the relationship with the Joker and her friendship with Poison Ivy. Paul Dini was initially inspired by the mole characters of the Adam West Batman TV series. For those who don't know what mole characters are, they are basically female characters who help the main villain of the week. Most commonly, the villains would have a main henchperson of the opposite sex. This idea was used in a lot of different movies and shows, including the aforementioned 60s Batman series and some of the 90s Batman movies, including Batman Forever and Batman and Robin for Two-Face and Mr. Freeze respectively.
Alright everyone, chill.
As far as her core character though, Danny looked to one of his good friends, Arlene Sorkin. Sorkin was a regular on our Days of Our Lives, and in one of the episodes, she dressed as a court jester during a dream sequence in which she was entertaining the king and queen.
What? No knock-knock jokes? No funny hats? Let's do what they do on the castle down the block. We'll throw the peasants in the moat and watch them drown.
You could see here some of what would be part of Harley's personality traits during her performance. Added to that, then he pushed for her to be the voice for the actress in the animated TV series.
You know, Bats, I always thought there was a spark between us. Well, now there is. I know you're shocked. Come and get me, Bats. I double dare ya.
Although she wasn't the only actress to play Harley, she was the most beloved, but there were reports that doing the voice strained Sorkin very much, especially when she played her role in the Arkham Asylum video game, so she quietly retired from the role.
I hate when people talk during the movie.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you're enjoying what you're seeing so far, hit that like button. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on my next video. But for now, let's get back to Harley. As mentioned earlier, Harley appeared as one of Joker's henchpersons, but her role expanded to being Joker's girlfriend and having their relationship being the cornerstone of her character for much of her first decade in existence. For a while, it was unknown to fans as the Harley came to be, until the one-shot Mad Love was released in 1993. This comic had flashbacks to her pre-Harley days. Harleen Quinzel was a resident psychiatrist at Arkham Asylum and began sessions with the Joker. During the sessions, she was enamored by the Joker's story of his personal life, such as Joker's alcoholic father abusing him. The Joker took this opportunity to emotionally manipulate her into falling in love with him. Harleen was convinced that Batman was the source of Joker's anger and was determined to fix it. Now madly in love, she broke the Joker out of the asylum, taking on the Harley persona and falling into lunacy. An interesting part of this episode and book was that the flashbacks were wrapped in a story where Harley felt that the only way for the Joker to love her was to kill Batman herself. Weirdly enough, she actually managed to catch Batman and had him hanging over a tank of piranhas, ready to kill him. But Joker, instead of being happy by this, was enraged by the fact that she managed to do something he couldn't, and he threw her out the window. She was captured by the GCPD shortly after, and while recovering from her injuries at Arkham, renounces Joker, breaking up with him forever, at least until he sends her flowers.
Angel.
And she falls back in love with him. This became a trademark of her character for a long time, with the back and forth relationship with the Joker. And this is the secret origin of Harley Quinn. There's more to her history, and she has changed in many ways over the years. But that's a story for another time. A pop culture icon who also happens to be one of the oldest characters in DC Comics. He's a monstrous creature brought to life by the mad scientist Victor Frankenstein and has been involved in stories in the DCU for decades. With his superhuman strength, Frankenstein is a force to be reckoned with. But his true horror lies in his tragic past, filled with death and destruction. Join me as I dive into the dark world of Frankenstein and discover his history in DC Comics. Frankenstein, the classic monster created by Mary Shelley in her 1818 novel, has been a cultural touchstone for over 200 years. In that time, the monster has appeared in numerous stories and movies, including one of the earliest Hollywood horror films. The character of Frankenstein's monster was first brought to the silver screen in 1931 with Boris Karloff's iconic portrayal, but it wasn't until 1948 that the monster was given new life in DC Comics during his first appearance in Detective Comics issue number 135. In the comics, like the novel, the monster is brought to life by a scientist named Victor Frankenstein, who is horrified by his creation and abandons him. From here, we have a couple different versions of the character. A character named Ivan, referred to as Frankenstein's monster, first appeared in Detective Comics in the 1940s. He was Dr. Victor Frankenstein's large and lumbering assistant who was returned to life following a huge electric shock. Another version, more in keeping with the origins of Mary Shelley's original character, fought the Phantom Stranger, and yet another version, a more heroic variation, met with the young All-Stars before emerging from the shadows in Seven Soldiers and Creature Commanders. This Frankenstein set the stage for the current incarnation of the character. As a member of the Creature Commandos, Frankenstein fought alongside other classic monsters, but it wasn't until the 1990s that the character was given his own solo series, in which he struggled to come to terms with his own humanity and find a place in the world. Frankenstein was also featured in Seven Soldiers of Victory series, written by Grant Morrison, that served to modernize the character more akin to how he is presented now. After Flashpoint, Frankenstein is now a former superhuman advanced defense executive agent, SHADE for short, and a reluctant member of the Justice League Dark. Accidentally created with a conscience, the seeming brute turned on his creator Victor Frankenstein, freeing prisoners scheduled for experimentation. Afterwards, the creature left to explore the world and confront the nature of his origins. He still cannot decide whether he is alive or dead. Calling himself Frankenstein, he finally gained purpose in life after being recruited by SHADE commander Father Time. Fighting in both World Wars and the Korean conflict, often supported by the Creature Commandos, he wed Lady Frankenstein, another SHADE agent, known as the Bride of Frankenstein. But tragedy followed. as she was forced to kill their son when he proved to be twisted and evil, ultimately begging for his own death. The marriage fell apart, but both continued working for Shade, saving the world from many horrific threats. Frankenstein also fought along Swamp Thing against the Rot and in the Trinity War as part of Justice League Dark. Frankenstein himself is a powerful hero and is capable of many things due in part to his creation. But before that, if you enjoy what you're seeing, hit that like button, and for more DC stories, why not subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. But for now, let's get back to Frankenstein. Frankenstein is not just another classic movie monster. He also has some impressive powers and abilities that set him apart from others. Being an undead being, Frankenstein is immune to aging, disease, and most forms of injury. Frankenstein can replace damaged or missing limbs with grafts taken from individuals of a similar build and adapted to his unique physiology. He also has superhuman strength and endurance, allowing him to lift heavy objects and withstand extreme temperatures and other harsh conditions. Frankenstein has been portrayed with various abilities throughout the comics. In some comics, he is shown as a skilled hand-to-hand combatant, and in others, he has been portrayed as having superhuman agility and reflexes. In addition, Frankenstein has been shown to possess a certain level of intelligence, being able to understand and use technology, and even build gadgets and machines. He has mental access to the Shade database via a surgical implant. Frankenstein's powers and abilities make him a formidable opponent in battle and a valuable ally to any team he joins. And this has been proven true as he's appeared in many teams and storylines over the years. Although in recent years, Frankenstein has made several appearances in comics and graphic novels, adding to his already long history in comics. One of his most recent appearances was in the Justice League Dark series, where he joins a team to take on supernatural threats. He also appears in Dark Knight's Dark Metal event. Frankenstein is recruited by Batman to help him defeat the Batman Who Laughs, and his Dark Multiverse versions of Batman. Frankenstein also appeared in the Dark Crisis event, Heroes in Crisis, and part of the Gotham City Monsters. He is set to appear in the new animated series Creature Commandos, currently being developed as part of the Chapter 1 era of the new DCU.
Ah yes, ultimate knowledge. Ultimately, pain and suffering are all man will ever know. Good Lord.
Felix Faust is an incredibly powerful sorcerer and notorious villain in the DC Comics universe, renowned for his unmatched ability to control magic and his frequent clashes with the various superheroes, including the legendary Justice League. In this video, we'll take a closer look at his origins, awe-inspiring powers, and some of his most notable storylines. So sit back, relax, and get ready as we delve into one of DC's most unique villains, Felix Faust. Faust, the powerful sorcerer, has been a character in DC Comics since 1962. He made his first appearance in the 10th issue of the Justice League comics. His character was initially portrayed as one who sought eternal life and immense magical power, and to achieve this, he made deals with demons and ultimately sold his soul in exchange for powers. With his newfound abilities, Faust was capable of manipulating magic to achieve a variety of effects, including teleportation, demon summoning, and even reality manipulation. Faust was often pitted against the Justice League, using his powerful magical abilities to try and defeat them. He had a particular issue with Green Lantern, frequently targeting him in his plots. As a formidable sorcerer, he is known for being able to summon demons and other supernatural entities to do his bidding, making him a large threat to the world. Over the years, his character became more complex as his backstory and motivations were fleshed out. He was portrayed as a tragic figure driven by the desire to regain his lost youth and power. He was ultimately doomed to failure by his own pride and ambition. Despite his evil deeds, his desire to reclaim what he had lost made him a more sympathetic character. One notable incident was when he posed as Dr. Fate and offered to bring back the wife of Ralph Dibny from the dead. He hoped to trick him into using her soul in exchange for his, but Ralph, being the great detective that he is, realized this and managed to trap both Faust and Neron in the Tower of Fate. The incident came at the cost of Ralph's life. However, in a bittersweet ending, he was reunited with his wife in the afterlife. The incident added a new layer to Faust's character, showcasing his cunning and manipulation skills, while also demonstrating his willingness to go to great lengths to achieve his goals. However, after Flashpoint, Faust's origins were changed like many other characters in the DC universe. But before I get into that, I just wanted to say thank you for watching. If you're enjoying what you're seeing, hit that like button. But for now, let's get back to it. After the events of Flashpoint, a massive reality-altering event, Faust showed a noticeable decrease in power.
Once a formidable force in the realm of magic, he was reduced to someone who merely dabbled in the arcane arts. However, he remained a force to be reckoned with due to his nefarious actions and evil intentions. In his quest for power, he became obsessed with finding the all-powerful books of magic, which would grant him unparalleled abilities. Despite facing opposition from various heroes and villains, he persevered, proving himself to be a formidable adversary in a number of storylines. Overall, the character's shift in power and change in focus provided an interesting evolution in his character arc and added a depth to his already complex personality. In the storyline, Forever Evil Blight, the villains Felix Faust and Nick Necro join forces to create the crime syndicate's Thaumatin weapon. This weapon is powered by the life force of imprisoned occult superheroes including Black Orchid, Enchantress, Blue Devil, Sargon the Sorcerer, and Zatanna. The villains plan to use this weapon to take over the world. However, they are defeated by the Justice League Dark, which includes John Constantine. Despite their defeat, the villains were not done yet. John Constantine later encounters a monstrous version of Felix Faust from the future. This future version of Faust is immortal and among the last living beings in existence. Faust is an intriguing character in the DC universe, famous for his involvement in the occult. You may have seen him in various animated series, such as the super popular Justice League animated series, or in movies such as Justice League Dark. In live action form, Faust was brought to life in a totally different way in the Constantine television series. Despite being associated with the darkest side of the DC universe, Faust is a captivating character that continues to be a regular in DC Comics. Nightwing, real identity, Dick Grayson, was actually the first Robin. He first appeared in Detective Comics number 38 all the way back in 1940. He was a member of a circus act called the Flying Graysons, along with his mother and father. But this life in the circus was cut short due to the death of his parents by mobster Tony Zuko. Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, decides to adopt him as his ward, due in part to he himself losing his parents at a young age. This shared tragedy brings them closer and leads him to becoming a sidekick as Robin. Over the years, they shared many adventures together, with Grayson having his own adventures in his own comics on the superhero team called the Teen Titans. The Teen Titans are a group of young heroes who are made up of the sidekicks of several members of the Justice League, including Speedy, Aqualad, Donna Troy, and Kid Flash. During his time on the team, he leaves Batman and heads off on his own crime-fighting journey, eventually retiring the identity of Robin into his own persona, Nightwing. As Nightwing, he becomes a protector of Bloodhaven, the sister city to Gotham, in addition to helping Gotham when it is in need. Although he has no superpowers, he excels in combat with the mastery of several different martial arts, as well as having superior detective and analyzation skills, which he uses in combat to read his opponents. In terms of these combat skills, he's only second to Batman in these areas. Due to his training in the circus and his time with Batman, he is considered the world's greatest acrobat and a natural-born athlete. However, unlike Batman, he tends to work better with others and is one of the foremost team leaders and tacticians, surpassing Batman in this area. In terms of gameplay, Nightwing seems to be the most balanced of the team and will likely serve as team leader in the story. Like many DC characters, there's been multiple Batgirls, but the first and most popular is Barbara Gordon. Barbara is the daughter of Commissioner Jim Gordon and first appeared in Detective Comics number 359, intervening in a kidnapping attempt on Bruce Wayne during a costume ball where she was dressed in a Batman-inspired costume. This led to her starting a crime-fighting career as Batgirl. Over the years, she was involved in several Bat-family storylines, but her physical career was cut short after the Joker shot her in the spine during the infamous Killing Joke storyline. After this, there was a notable shift in her character as she was now paralyzed from the waist down. This led to her time as Oracle, where she focused on intelligence gathering, data analysis, programming, hacking, and information brokerage. During this time, she cemented herself as one of the world's foremost experts in these fields, was the leader of the team known as the Birds of Prey. In a controversial decision,
DC Comics changed her character once again back in 2011, removing her paralysis and becoming Batgirl once again, which is her current status in the books. As far as her abilities, she excels in martial arts. Maybe not as capable as Batman or Nightwing, but she can hold her own in combat. As previously mentioned though, she is one of DC's foremost intellects and is often Batman's go-to in terms of information and hacking abilities. Both areas arguably she does better than Batman himself, and it allows him to better focus on his investigations and missions. In terms of gameplay, Batgirl will be combat focused, more so close range combat. Along with her technical abilities, she will help the team in terms of hacking and coding areas of gameplay. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy what you're seeing, hit that like button. And for other DC stories, remember to check out my channel. But for now, let's get back to the Gotham Knights. During the early 80s, Robin became a mainstay in the Teen Titans and was not used in Batman comics. But over time, it became clear that Batman books suffered when they did not have a character to act as a sounding board, as Dick Grayson once did. Jason Todd first appeared in Batman Comics issue 357, and a few issues later appeared in the Robin persona. Although an orphan, he was considerably different than Dick, as he was from the streets, and in his first meeting with Batman, he was actually attempting to steal the wheels of the Batmobile. Batman takes him in an attempt to reform and mentor Todd. As Robin, he was quite different in respect to his demeanor due to his upbringing, and many readers were not fans of the character. In the famous Death in the Family storyline, Joker kidnaps Jason Todd as Robin, and DC held a fan vote via a 900 number in order to determine if Jason would die or not, and ultimately, fans chose for him to die. He was later revived due to the Infinite Crisis event, donning the Red Hood persona initially to taunt Batman and to fight crime in a more brutal way, much like the Punisher in that he kills. Over the next few years, he jumps between personas including stints as Nightwing and Red Robin, but eventually he settles on the Red Hood identity. He has recently stopped killing, adopting Batman's no-kill policy, but still employs the use of guns and more violent weapons like knives. His fighting ability is on par with many of the Bat family as he was trained by Batman, but is different in that he was also trained during his time away from Batman by the League of Shadows. He also has extensive firearm training and is considered a master marksman. The use of firearms makes him unique in the Bat family, as the other members of the team were trained mostly under Batman, who does not use firearms in his crime-fighting tactics. Additionally, he has good detective skills, although probably the weakest among the team, but his history of crimes and criminal behavior gives him a unique viewpoint when looking into crimes that other members of the team don't have. In terms of gameplay, his combat will rely heavily on heavy hitting and firearms. The last member of the team and the current Robin is Tim Drake. Tim's origins are different in how he began his role as Robin. In the past, with Dick or Jason, Batman approached them to help him out. Yet Tim, after Jason's death, realized that Batman was spiraling into a darker version of himself. He was convinced that Batman needed Robin. Tim was able to deduce the real identities of Batman and Nightwing. He initially approached Nightwing to assume the role of Robin, but Nightwing refused. During an encounter with Two-Face, Dick and Alfred began to see Tim as a potential Robin himself. Batman decided to mentor and train him, but initially refused to put him in the field as he didn't want to put him in danger as he did with Jason Todd. Later, Tim manages to save Batman in an encounter with Scarecrow, after which Batman lets him fully assume the role of Robin. In more recent years, with Damian Wayne, Batman's biological son, becoming Robin, he assumed the identity of Red Robin, but the game will focus on his role as Robin. Like many of the other members of the Bat family, he's experienced in many different martial arts with a focus on the bow staff as he was trained by Lady Shiva in this skill. Additionally, he has a large understanding of sciences, including computer science, biology, engineering, and genetics, to the point where he had attempted to reclone Superboy. In terms of detective skills, they are comparable to Batman, as he was able to properly deduce the identity of Batman and Nightwing in his origin story. In the game, his combat will be based on the use of the bow staff. He will be bringing his detective skills and expertise in these sciences to help the team fight crime in the city.
The next set of videos are actually fine. It's about the Sandman series, but I delisted them because of the controversy behind the author himself. So try not to give me too much crap about the praises that I give him during these videos. The Sandman series was a really important comic to me in terms of
the type of stories I like to read, and things like that. But unfortunately, the writer and the situation messed it up, and I can't do anything about that. So it's one of those where I want to separate the artist and the artist, that kind of situation.
Now the secret's the...
The Sandman is a comic book series created by Neil Gaiman in 1989. For those who need a reminder of who Neil Gaiman is, he wrote the American Gods, Coraline, and Stardust novels, most of which have already been adapted to live action or animated in the case of Coraline. Added to that, he created and wrote for the series Good Omens, which is currently airing on Amazon Prime. He is notable for a lot of reasons, including the Sandman series. The comic book ran from 1989 to 1996 for 75 issues, as well as several spin-off miniseries set within the Sandman universe, including Death, The Time of Your Life, and Death, The High Cost of Living, which focuses on another character called Death. This is all well and good, but you might be wondering what the hype is. Neil Gaiman is a creative genius and has this weird sense of styling and themes that are similar to Tim Burton, but far more philosophical and idealistic. Many of his stories deal with very grounded issues in a fantasy-like shell. The Sandman comic series goes over many ideas that we as humans grapple with on a daily basis through the analysis of fictional concepts, including life and death, free will and fate, as well as many concepts of the afterlife and the human mind. At its core though, and specifically when talking about the Sandman, Gaiman thrives in a fantasy horror setting that has influenced many works after its release. The success of the Sandman can be defined in many ways, including its influence over the fantasy genre, as I mentioned before, but in a material sense through its numerous awards, including more than 26 Eisner Awards, a Hugo Award in 2000, and the last graphic novel and comic to receive the World Fantasy Award. Before winning the award, no other comic had won the award before that, and no comic will win after, as the people behind the award changed the rules to prevent future comics from winning this award.
You know me. We have met before. I will guide you into the dreaming. Follow me.
The comic series revolves around the character Dream. Dream is a member of the Endless, which aren't exactly people or deities, but rather they are anthropomorphic versions of the universal concepts like death, destiny, and of course, dreams. Dream, sometimes known as the Sandman, Morpheus, Bess, is meant to be a representation of dreams of any culture. The idea here is that if a culture has a god of dreams, Dream or Morpheus would be the personification of that god. Morpheus' powers are great, from reality warping to mind reading. He lives in his castle in the dream realm known as the Dreaming. Roughly 70 years before the present, in an effort to escape death and be immortal, the magician, Roderick Burgess, performed an occult ritual to trap death, but accidentally trapped Dream instead. Realizing his mistake and fearing the consequences, he keeps Morpheus trapped for the next 70 years. During this time, the world suffers an epidemic of sleeping sickness. Morpheus manages to escape, and the series follows him as he attempts to navigate the world that he left. He encounters many new and old individuals, including DC characters like John Constantine, Dr. Destiny, as well as some individuals including Lucifer, whose spin-off series served as an inspiration for the television series.
Surprised to see me? You shouldn't be.
The Sandman graphic novel details the adventures of Dream after his release from a 70-year imprisonment and tracks his reaction to the changes in the world around him. He was trapped by a magician seeking to escape mortality by capturing death, but he failed and captured Dream instead. In his infinite wisdom to avoid more trouble, he continues to hold Dream captive for the next 70 years, creating an epidemic of sleeping sickness. This can be attributed to the fact that Dream, who controls dreams and nightmares, was trapped and was unable to attend to his duties as the Masters of Dreams. Morpheus is part of a group of entities known as the Endless. The Endless are a group of 7 universal concepts including dream, death, destiny, despair, desire, delirium, and destruction. These concepts for the sake of the series, have been anthropomorphized into human-like beings that you see in the series. Dream is a tall, slim male figure with black hair and a big cloak. Death has leather pants and a tank top with piercings and a goth-like look. But the truth is that the Endless can look however they want, as is the case with Desire. Desire can be best described in modern terms as a non-binary. However, that is a modern viewpoint of a character that existed before the world was created. It's important to note that Gaiman since 2017 has since used the pronouns they and them when they refer to Desire. In the case of Desire, they have an androgynous look to them, similar to David Bowie, Prince, or Boy George, but in some cases can show as a man or woman, both or neither. Desire and Dream have a deep-seated rivalry, as Desire had once made Dream fall in love with a woman who left him for someone else. Despite this happening years ago, Dream still holds a grudge. This grudge against Desire creates tension in the room whenever they are together. I mentioned earlier that the Endless can appear in whatever form they choose, which is true, but conversely, these entities can seem different depending on who is looking at them. For instance, if we look at Death, arguably the most common incarnation would be the Grim Reaper.
This is impossible. I am the Grim Reaper, master of the forces of life and death.
Or in ancient Greece, it might have been Thanatos or Hades, Anubis or Osiris in Egyptian mythology, even Obu-Nabali in some West African cultures. But it is important to note that the Endless are not gods or deities, rather they are innate forces that pull the universe together. They have existed before gods and are essential to creation and destruction of the universe. Marvel Comics has a similar concept in their universe with death, infinity, eternity, and entropy, all having represented different aspects of the universe, such as entropy, who represents destruction in the universe. The difference here is that rarely will these entities interact with mortals and are cosmic scale beings that drives the universe forward. This makes the Endless unique in comparison, as they have their own personality traits and will interact with small scale human problems in addition to larger world ending situations. The last thing to note is the relationship between the Endless themselves. I mentioned about the relationship between Desire and Dream. The Endless have a bond that is more akin to siblings rather than a team dynamic, which is why the relationships between them can be up and down, much like brother or sister. In fact, there are many instances where they will call themselves as brother and sister, as often Death will refer to Dream as her brother. This is perhaps why in some way they have been able to establish a kind of familial bond, despite not necessarily being siblings in the traditional sense that we are used to.
I need your help. If dreams disappear, then so will humanity.
You could do without dreams for a while. I haven't had a decent night's sleep in ages.
John Constantine has grown in popularity over the last 2 decades with more appearances in mainstream comics, his own television series, and subsequent appearances on Dungeons of Tomorrow by the great Matt Ryan. Unfortunately for Matt Ryan fans, Warner Brothers is developing other projects, including an HBO Max television series that includes John Constantine, and has seen to restrict his appearance in other projects, hence why he was removed from the Legends of Tomorrow CW series. I'm sure that this is one of the reasons as to why we're not seeing his character in the Sandman series, but Neil Gaiman mentioned that despite this, the decision to use Joanna Constantine instead of John was made early on in the development cycle. The fact that the creator of the series is clearly okay with this change of character should deter any negativity. It won't, but it should. That being said, I think many people are overestimating John Constantine's role in the series. While it's true that Constantine appeared in the first few issues of the Sandman series, his appearance was limited. After Morpheus escapes his prison, he sets out to collect his totem of power. One of these is his pouch of sand. Constantine happens to have come across this in his adventures. During the course of the issue, they find the pouch, but at a cost. That of the death of an old girlfriend of John's. After that, his next appearance is over 60 issues later in issue 71. As far as the character Joanna Constantine, she exists in the comic as well, as an ancestor of John's from the late 18th century who encounters Dream. She believes him to be the devil who was foretold to be the key to achieving her dreams of wealth and power. Dream, though, felt that he could use her as a tool and opted to make her an offer which was never revealed. All this being said, I can't stress this point enough, but Gaiman has had heavy involvement in the development of the series. Added to that, in an interview with Entertainment Weekly regarding to changes made in moving things to a modern setting,
I think there is something very odd and organic that happened by being able to go, okay, this is We're not doing it as a period piece. We're not setting it, Sandman, when it came out, was being published from 88 until 1996 and is set from about 88 until, I think, 1993. Technically, it's a much more compressed time period. What we did here was just go, okay, he's going to be imprisoned in 1916, just as he was, but he's going to get out now. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And that's changed some things. It's changed less than you'd imagine, but it's also given us a world which, again, feels very much like its own world.
My creations do not walk amongst the living, killing mortals for pleasure.
Oh, you don't think dreams can die? Let's find out.
I spoke about the Endless in a prior video and how among the group, Morpheus is unique for several reasons, including the fact that his realm is home to other individuals who have their own individual personalities. The caveat is that Morpheus creates his being at his leisure, as is with the locations within the dreaming. He can destroy, change, or create new beings in the dreaming anytime he wants. One of the unique creatures is a nightmare called the Corinthian, who was shown briefly in the trailer for the series and will be played by Boyd Holbrook. The Corinthian is a unique character in the Sandman series, and many fans will remember him for his physical appearance. The Corinthian is notable for being an excellent dresser and only wearing white, but that's not exactly why people remember him. He always wears sunglasses to cover his eyes, who are in fact not eyes, but small mouths with 2 rows of jagged teeth lining the eye sockets. These mouths are fully functional as well, to the point where he can eat and breathe through them. Despite his lack of normal eyes, he can see just fine. As he wasn't creepy enough already, he likes to take the eyes of his victim and eat them through these mouths. Corinthian is a creation of Morpheus in the dreaming, and his existence is dependent on Morpheus's will. As such, Morpheus seems to keep him on a short leash, but during Dream's imprisonment by the magician, the Corinthian escaped to the United States, where he would become a serial killer and suddenly convince others to do the same.
Nightmares do not belong in the waking world.
Oh, it turns out I fit right in.
Dreams don't fucking die.
The dreaming, as mentioned before, is the realm of Morpheus, who has complete control over the beings there, as well as what exists there, including environments and structures. This is also a place where people go when they dream. In the center of the dreaming exists the palace, which is where Dream resides within the realm. In the palace exists a massive library that holds every book in existence, even if those books were never written and only imagined. Lucian is the chief librarian, and he maintained the realm when Dream was imprisoned. After Dream's return, Lucian becomes his most trusted servant and becomes an authority figure in the dreaming soon after. Vivian Akimpong will be playing Lucian in the series, and while she has only been acting for a couple years, it's too early to really tell how they're going to handle the character in the TV series. So I'm going to say that she'll do just fine. Additionally, Lucian in the comics is a tall, thin man with pointed ears and amber hair, but since Lucian is from the dreaming, theoretically, Morpheus could make the character look however he wants, so that's not going to be an issue for the series at all. The Raven, known as Matthew, acts as Morpheus' messenger raven to inform him of things going on in the realm and other places of importance. What makes Matthew unique among the residents of the dreaming is that he was originally human. When Matthew was human, he was involved in an accident that put him in a coma, during which he was dreaming. Unfortunately for him, the corrupt hospital staff took this opportunity to harvest his organs, leading to his death. Because he was in a dreaming, Morpheus had some sympathy for him and offered him a chance to be a raven in his realm, an offer he accepted. Oddly enough, Matthew was not the first raven in the realm. Lucian was actually the first raven in the realm who was turned into what he is now. When Lucian was a raven, he was white, as opposed to Matthew, who is a more common looking black raven. Matthew is a recurring character in the series that mainly acts as part of Dream's supporting cast of servants. He will be voiced by Patton Oswalt, who needs no introduction.
It's really nice by the fire.
Of course it is, Powder Brain. It's exceedingly cozy.
The dreaming, as explained in previous videos, exists as the realm of Morpheus. Everything in the dreaming is a creation of Morpheus. He can create and destroy things at will, and sometimes the dreaming will react to his moods, whether he's in good spirits or highly annoyed. As such, these individuals in the dreaming are also creations of his, like Lucian and the Corinthian. Two other recurring characters in the Sandman universe are Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel are based on the biblical accounts of Cain, the first murderer, and Abel, the first victim.
As such, a recurring joke in the series has Cain killing Abel again and again, only to have Abel to come back to life each time. Their personalities are also exemplifying the traits of the biblical characters, in a sense that Cain is a cruel, harsh, and short-tempered person, while Abel is the complete opposite. Abel is gentle, yet neurotic, and fearful, especially of his older brother, Cain. Despite this, Cain does care for his brother, developing a codependency with him, yet cannot stop himself from killing him. Abel revives each time, hoping and craving for the typical brotherly love relationship, which keeps him in this loop with Cain. These two are the denizens of the Dreaming and reside in the House of Mysteries and the House of Secrets, two locations in the Dreaming. They are neighbors, but often stay in each other's homes. These two are the first to discover Dream when he is released from his prison and shelter him until some of his strength is restored. Much like Matthew and Lucian, these two are recurring cast of characters that assist Dream in his journey.
Ruby makes dreams come true. I'm going to use it to save the world.
While many are aware of the Sandman's connection to DC Comics, it was actually published under their Vertigo imprint, which was intended to be their mature reader line. So one may wonder, with all the multiverse stuff, does the Sandman take place in the DC universe? Well, the answer is yes, at least in the time it was published, as the DC Comics universe is considerably different now than it was at the time of publishing. Yet in this world, Superman, Batman, and the Justice League exist here. It's here that leads us to Dr. Destiny, who has the power to make dreams real and thus manipulate reality. Dr. Destiny has appeared in the Justice League animated series,
and you're never going to be able to slow down again,
as well as the CW in a crossover event. Dr. Destiny can control reality with dreams through the use of a machine that he made, which is powered by the Dreamstone. The Dreamstone is one of the items that Morpheus is looking for because it contains a lot of his power. Although initially, for John Dee, the machine would not work properly, but continued use and tinkering led to the stone being attuned to Dee rather than Morpheus. Dee encountered the Justice League several times before being captured and sent to Arkham Asylum. The Doctor is a capable foe, but his sanity is fragile to say the least. When his mother passes away, who also has a connection to Burgess, the man that imprisoned Dream, Dee goes on a rampage, driving the world insane through use of dreams. His last stand is at a 24 Hours diner, which is not something I will spoil. Suffice to say, this is one of the darkest portions of the series, and is something that will test the viewers. Gaiman does not pull any punches in this part of the story, and manages to connect many threads in the DC universe with this story. David Thewlis will be playing John Dee, and I can't think of anyone better. This is not his first stint in DC, as many will remember his portrayal of Ares in the first Wonder Woman movie.
And we could return this world to the paradise it was before then.
As well as his role in the Harry Potter series as Remus Lupin.
Your waking world is shaped by dreams. Dreams and nightmares that I create and which I must control.
Visuals. The visuals in the series are one of the more engaging aspects of the show, from well done wardrobes and character effects like the eyes of the Corinthian to the sweeping landscapes in the Dreaming. But there are some really interesting things that they did that you may not have noticed. One of the more engaging visual aspects to me was the framing of certain scenes in the series. The storyboard team paid close attention to panels in the comics for reference, as many shots in the series can be matched up with the panels from the original comic book. Additionally, the aspect ratio of some of the episodes of the series, you may have noticed the ending credits before Netflix rushed you off to the next episode. But for some keen-eyed viewers, they looked very familiar, and for good reason. The original artist for the comic book covers of the original series, Dave McKean, actually came out of retirement in order to design the end credits for all 10 episodes of the show. So on your next rewatch, take a look through the credits to see his work. Practical effects and wardrobe. Like most television shows and movies these days, Sandman used many visual effects and CGI to accomplish most of the shots and scenes we saw on the show, but some of the effects on the show were done using practical effects. Before I get into that though, if you guys are enjoying the video, hit that like button. And for more videos like this, and to get notified when the next video is released, subscribe and hit that little notification bell. Hell was one of the more central, otherworldly realms presented in the series, aside from the Dreaming of course. A lot of the scenery was done using CGI, but some aspects were done using practical visual effects. The scene where Morpheus is talking to Nada his former lover, actual fire was used, so the set had to be doused in fire retardant in order to prevent damage to it. The gates of hell were an impressive visual for the show, and it might seem like it's clearly computer generated, but sculptors spent a month building a 25-foot wide, 20-foot tall set piece. Some interesting stuff regarding the wardrobe, including the Corinthians glasses, which were super dark, and Boyd Holbrook had trouble adjusting to it. Other pairs that were less dark were used for scenes in which he had to walk through obstacles. Fashion designer Giles Deacon was hired to create Lucifer's outfits for the series. Deacon also happens to be Lucifer actress Gwendolyn Christie's real-life husband. Although it is well known that the Sandman series is part of the DC multiverse, the Netflix series had very little outright mentions of this, but there were some Easter eggs that you guys may have missed from DC, including Jed Walker wearing a Static Shock t-shirt and watching a cartoon in the hotel. Added to that, Jed's crime-fighting dreams picture several DC characters in a monitor room, including Captain Cold, Psycho Pirate, Batman, and Flash. Also, for those wondering if Lita Hall had any connection to DC, she's actually the only daughter of Steve Trevor and Diana Prince, aka Wonder Woman, Fire and Despair. Two others were clearly mentioned, including Destiny and Delirium. One notable exception was Destruction, who was not mentioned but was referenced in the first episode by Lucien. Lucien mentions that the Dream's absence was not the first time one of the Endless abandoned their duties. This was Destruction, who had not been seen or heard of in the comic for over 300 years. What would happen if Batman got hooked on speed? No, not that. I meant the Speed Force, of course. In many respects, Batman is considered to be the best hero in DC Comics aside from Superman. He is respected by his fellow heroes, and he's respected in our world. In terms of representation in media, he's had the most animated television series, movies, and video games, save Spider-Man. But why? Batman is human and has no power. In fact, most people joke that his power is prep time.
Alright, what's all this commotion about?
Nothing new, just Batman spewing nonsense again.
It's not nonsense, it's a fact. Well, what exactly are you guys talking about? Listen, all I said was that if I had prep time, there's really no fight that I could lose. Oh, okay, well that's obnoxious, huh?
Batman is considered top tier for the fact that he's conceived a plan for every situation, both in hypotheticals and actual. It was said at times that the reason Batman isn't given powers for too long of a time, aside from Elseworld stories, for the simple fact that Bruce can't fathom having those abilities and not doing everything in his power to save the world around him. But his morals and ethics keep him from being power hungry, and using darker methods to achieve his goals. A core aspect of the Bruce character is his family.
I don't have friends, I got family.
Joking aside, Batman has built a family of friends and heroes who provide the emotional support that everyone needs, even the Batman. He is protective of this family because of the loss of his parents. There is a question at times if the addition of the Robins helped him as a hero or made him a less capable hero. Yet, it has been written time and time again how having Robin, whether it was Dick, Jason, Tim, or Damian, have managed to ground them and keep them together. He has been a father to all of them. As a father myself, I can tell you that as much as I teach my own son, every day I learn from him. Every day I learn from him. He grounds me, makes me double think my actions in a good way. In the case of Batman, where he has an impact on a multiversal scale, this is more important because his actions need to be grounded, otherwise people would get hurt. Yet, what happens if Bruce lost everyone? His grief, coupled with the thought that if he was just fast enough, he could have helped all of them. The Red Death is a product of this tragedy. In a world where Bruce loses everyone, his obsession to be fast enough to save the people around him drives him to get Barry Allen, aka The Flash, to give him access to the Speed Force. Barry understands his grief but knows that the Speed Force isn't the answer. But Batman has made his choice, and when no one dared to question his actions, he proceeds to use the Rogue's weapon, including Captain Cold's gun, and the Mirror Master's power to corral Barry into position, where he uses another villain's weapon in the form of Mr. Freeze's cryostasis formula in order to slow him down enough to knock him out. This is the part that I see every YouTuber covering for good reason. It just sounds crazy to me. Batman modifies the Batmobile using the Cosmic Treadmill technology and straps Barry to the front of it, and begins to use Barry and the Batmobile to drive directly into the Speed Force, which merges him together with Barry to create this new being.
I am Speed.
Now the Red Death, a Batman devoid of morals with the power of the Speed Force, He uses the power to kill Scarecrow, and in his twisted mind, save the world. One of the craziest parts of this is that the Red Death still has Barry Allen inside of him, and Barry has no control, but can see all the twisted things Bruce does as Red Death, the death and destruction, and he can't do anything about it. The Red Death is an amalgamation of tragedy from 2 points of view, from a grief-stricken man unable to process his loss, and uses his resources to obtain power that he believes will allow him to save the world. Conversely, there's another man, a friend, a hero, whose power is being manipulated to commit acts of evil by one of his closest friends, and yet is powerless to do anything about it. Yet, in some ways, his death is even more tragic. As one of the Dark Knights, the Red Death was helping the rest of them against Prime Flash, Raven, and Cyborg, who were aboard the Ultima Thule, a ship designed to travel the multiverse using vibrational frequencies. Upon attacking the ship, Prime Flash releases a cage holding a baby universe that was powering the ship. Its release causes a massive amount of positive energy that transformed the Red Death into a gold version of himself, with the Barry Allen of that universe completely in control. With this shift, both Flashes now work together to defeat the Dark Knights. Prime Flash tells him to go back to his ship, but the other Barry tells him that he will stay there to ensure the baby universe can grow, so that the heroes have a chance to win. But the Batman Who Laughs mocks him, telling him that he knew that this would happen, that they had not told the Red Death all their plans, as he tells him that not only is the positive energy going to rip him apart, but that he sent warheads with dark baby universes chosen by Barbados himself. Now knowing that his actions were all for naught, the Red Death disappears. Unlike some of the other Dark Knights, there is some sense that we could sympathize with this character. On the Batman side of things, grief can drive people to do terrible things. And also, it's the fact that Barry wasn't able to do anything, watching all these terrible acts happen, and he was powerless. Added to that, it seems that the other Dark Knights that knew that he would be used as a sacrifice, which makes his whole existence a tragedy, as he lived for nothing and was never going to be able to save his world or the people he cared about. I know more than likely that Red Death is not a character we're going to see in the future, save a cameo here and there. I will say this is one of the more interesting characters to come out of the Dark Metal storyline. What do you guys think? Is he redeemable, or do you think he got what he deserved? Sound off in the comments below.
If you're still up, and if you're up to it, it would be a great time for you to like and subscribe to the video, and for now, enjoy the rest of the video. Before the recent announcement of his inclusion in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad and the spin-off TV series, Peacemaker was an obscure property and character. Created during the Silver Age of comics and published by Charlton Comics, he existed alongside other well-known characters from the publisher, including the Blue Beetle, Captain Atom, and The Question. After being bought out by DC, many of these other characters were integrated into the DC universe, and for the most part remained in the public eye in one form or another, in their canon. Peacemaker, on the other hand, was not so well used, and appeared here and there in DC Comics. The Peacemaker initially appeared as a backup story in The Fighting Five, number 40, in November of 1966. The character was initially somewhat of a paradox, because his real-life identity and his vigilante persona were contradictory. Christopher Smith was an envoy to the Geneva Arms Conference, whose primary mission in life was dedicated to world peace. On the other hand, when he changed into his Peacemaker role, he maintains the same dedication, perhaps even obsession, towards maintaining peace at all costs, especially in situations where acts of violence can only be stopped by other acts of violence. His primary foes consisted of warlords, dictators, and men committed to acts of war. In terms of abilities, he had the usual peak human conditioning that many heroes and villains had during this time. But what made him somewhat different from other vigilantes was his weaponry. Yes, he had the standard body armor and a jetpack for flight, and he also created his own custom weapons that I guess was as non-violent as he could be, considering. Some of these included a gun that fired a medicated pellet to numb his enemies, or knockout gas that could be fired at supersonic speed, all to follow his guidelines of ending conflict with non-violent solutions. That being said, he did have some crazy weapons. Most famous of his was his toilet lid shaped helmet that had a laser that could basically atomize things down to a molecule, as well as being packed with explosives and a hidden fuse, gloves that could turn into firebombs after a vial on them was crushed, and boots with explosives, and a flammable shirt. He was like a living Terminator, a walking bomb, ready to go off at any moment in the name of peace. Following his appearance in Fighting Five, Charlton Comics published a self-titled series from March 1967 to November 1967. From that point on, following the sales of Charlton Comics to DC Comics, they released their own limited series in 1988. He would appear in DC Comics working with the organization Checkmate, working to fight terrorists until his untimely death. He later appeared as a soul of purgatory in the Day of Judgment series, helping some heroes escape. He also appears in Doomsday Clock, which was a sequel series to Watchmen. Aside from Christopher Smith, there have been others to take the name, but none connected to this version. A similar character showed up in the Blue Beetle comic, but his look was different from the original. Despite some use in comics, he is for the most part unknown, appearing very sparingly, but now that John Cena is playing the character in the upcoming movie and series, I expect him to have a resurgence in popularity. More than likely we'll see a new streamlined origin and a limited series to follow, as many other characters in DC and Marvel have gotten when they appear in new media. Unlike some other obscure characters, Peacemaker has some meat on his bones, so to speak, and is a fairly interesting in that although for all intents and purposes he's a good guy seeking peace, his actions and obsession with it brings him to a place of excess in terms of violence. Although he genuinely takes on some evil people, it is also difficult to justify his actions at times. This complex characterization makes him more varied, giving the writer greater ability to tell a story.
The Death of Superman storyline is one of the most important stories in the realm of DC Comics. Spanning over 4 decades of storytelling, DC made the bold decision to eliminate Superman from existence. This tale, now ingrained in our collective consciousness, from the monumental clash with Doomsday to the emergence of various Superman, and ultimately the resurrection of Superman donning his iconic black suit. However, in this dark multiverse iteration, a twist unfolds, as it is Lois who becomes a catalyst for unforeseen tragedy. Lois, filled with grief and anger, criticizes the other heroes for their inability to assist Superman. But, to be fair, if Doomsday was able to kill Superman, what could the other heroes have done? However, in a surprising turn of events, Lois acquires powers and takes it upon herself to rectify the world's wrongs. She confronts the heroes who have failed Superman and works towards fixing the corrupt society that Superman was unable to, killing anyone she sees fit, becoming judge, jury, and executioner. This journey brings her face to face with numerous characters from the DC universe, including the return of Superman himself. This revelation horrifies Lois as she feels guilt for what she has done, as he witnesses the state of the world that she now inhabits. Ultimately, Superman meets his demise, leaving Lois as the eradicator of this new reality. Nightfall is undeniably one of the most significant and more well-known storylines in DC Comics, particularly when it comes to Batman. This narrative has been adapted multiple times, even making its way into live action with the film The Dark Knight Rises. It's an absolute must-read due to its introduction of Bane, a ruthless and strategic villain who caught Batman completely off guard. In one of the most iconic panels in comic book history, Bane infamously breaks Batman's back, leaving readers in sheer shock. This momentous event can be compared to other impactful events such as the death of Superman or Barry's demise in Crisis on Infinite Earths. Throughout the course of the story, Batman enlists Azrael as his temporary replacement during his recovery. In theory, this was the right choice, but it leads to Azrael's betrayal of Batman when he attempts to have Azrael stand down. Eventually, Batman reclaims his mantle, restoring order and bringing about a satisfying resolution. In the twisted tale from the dark multiverse, things didn't follow the usual heroic script. Bruce Wayne found himself unable to stop Azrael, and instead Azrael cemented his reign as Gotham's self-proclaimed protector, while Batman was unjustly imprisoned. As the years rolled on, Gotham fell deeper under Azrael's dark influence and Batman seemingly vanished from the scene. It is worth noting that Gotham evolved into a city-state during Azrael's prolonged rule, making everything in this alternate reality a tad more chaotic. The shocking revelation: Azrael had been holding Batman captive in a grim tower, and by this point, Bruce was quite literally falling apart. Over the years, Azrael had cruelly severed his limbs, all in a desperate bid to break the Bat and make him submit to his will. The turning point arrives when Talia al Ghul and the Son of Bane join forces to rescue Bruce Wayne. With the help of a cutting-edge bat suit, this unlikely trio embarks on a mission to stop Azrael's ambition, culminating in a showdown with him. In the end, Bruce Wayne, now committed to saving Gotham at any cost, takes a dark turn by eliminating Talia and Bane's son, all in his relentless quest to seize complete control of the city. The Crisis. Now let's talk about the granddaddy of them all, the original Universal reboot that turned DC on its heels. Crisis on Infinite Earths. This storyline, my friends, is nothing short of a game changer in the world of comics, We're talking about the obliteration of multiple universes, the deaths of beloved heroes like Supergirl and The Flash, the conversions of different versions of our favorite heroes, and the end of the Justice Society of America. Well, the first time around at least. The sheer impact of this crisis on storytelling in the comic book world is monumental, but it doesn't stop there. The tale shook things up to the core, giving birth to new character origins, shaking up the status quo. It's iconic, and definitely in the Hall of Fame of comic book stories, no doubt about it. Now picture this already legendary story but with a twist, imagining it unfolding within the mysterious and ominous realm of the dark multiverse. Now let's fast forward to the aftermath of the original crisis. In the comics, the JSA got imprisoned in a pocket dimension to fend off the impending Ragnarok. They fought relentlessly and managed to thwart the Ragnarok threat, eventually making a comeback to DC years later. But here, in this darker twist, it's a Justice League that gets stuck in this pocket dimension, and tragically, they didn't make it out alive. Surtur, the fire giant, managed to break free from this otherworldly prison, unleashing chaos upon the world. With the Justice League gone, it fell upon the shoulders of the Justice Society of America and the remaining heroes to take a stand. As the situation grew bleaker by the minute, Alan Scott, the Green Lantern of Earth, did something unthinkable. In a desperate bid to safeguard Earth and its inhabitants, he struck a deal that would change everything. He volunteered himself to serve as the herald of the demon Surtur, guiding him and his formidable armies to unsuspecting worlds, bringing a Ragnarok upon trillions and trillions of lives. That's right, he became the Dread Lantern. Now, if this all sounds a bit familiar, it's because it's got a vibe similar to the Silver Surfer story over in the Marvel Universe, when he struck that life-altering deal with Galactus. Alright, let's turn back the clock to the 80s, the golden era for Teen Titans that played a crucial role in saving DC Comics. You see, back then DC was teetering on the edge, just one bad month away from going belly up. It's a bit like how the X-Men breathed new life into Marvel Comics with their fresh storytelling and drew in a lot of new readers. But it was the Teen Titans who had their own moment in the sun. They brought innovation to the table with a roster of memorable characters and gripping narratives. And one story in particular stands out, the Judas Contract. This storyline, which unfolded in 1984 within the pages of the Tales of Teen Titans 42 to 44 and Tales of the Teen Titans Annual number 3, was a game changer. Picture this, enter Tara, this insane girl wielding the power to manipulate Earth itself. She's a double agent actually working for Deathstroke the Terminator, aka Slade Wilson, one of the Titans' most vicious enemies. She's eventually found out, and in a last-ditch attempt to stop the Titans, she causes her own death as her powers betray her, leading her to being crushed by the very Earth she controlled. Now, in the dark multiverse, Dick Grayson, aka Nightwing, talks to Tara about his retirement plans. Tara takes his words to a twisted extreme. She betrays Slade, transforms into Gaia, and uses her enhanced power to launch Titan's Tower into space with Starfire, Raven, Cyborg, and Wonder Girl inside. Then she attacks Dick, prompting Wally to save him. They call in Superman for backup, but Gaia's powers now are so immense that she can even defeat the Man of Steel by drawing in all of Earth's kryptonite to her. This causes massive earthquakes, signaling her complete control over the Earth. Now let's talk about the Hush storyline. It's one of the more well-known tales, and while it might not be everyone's favorite, the stunning artwork by Jim Lee alone makes it a must-read. The story kicks off with Batman swooping in to save a kidnapped boy from the clutches of Killer Croc. But hold up, Catwoman throws a curveball by swiping the ransom money, Batman takes a hit during the rescue, and it's none other than Huntress who comes to his aid. After recovering, he teams up with Catwoman to stop Ivy's wicked schemes, even going to head-to-head with the mind-controlled Superman. You know, just regular Batman stuff, right? But here's where things get interesting. In the original story, everything was caused by Thomas Elliot, an old friend of Bruce Wayne, who became the villainous Hush. But in a dark multiverse twist, the Elliots decide to raise Bruce Wayne themselves after his parents die, sidelining Alfred. Elliot rises to power as Senator and CEO of Wayne Enterprises, all thanks to his girlfriend Talia al Ghul. But things get crazier as Bruce finds himself committed to Arkham Asylum by none other than Thomas Elliot and the sinister Dr. Jonathan Crane. Gotham slowly transforms into a militarized city, pushing Barbara Gordon to lead a rebellion called the Outsiders. There's also some weird stuff with the Court of Owls going on. To make matters worse, a man in a bat costume starts terrorizing Gotham's elites, with the ultimate twist revealing where it is revealed to be an insane Bruce Wayne wearing this bat suit that mashes up the classic suit and the Hush aesthetic.
That it's not so bad at all.
Now let's talk about the second Crisis in a long line of Crisis events. This epic storyline was made by DC Comics editorial team to give their universe a good old spring cleaning. It revisited characters and concepts from the earlier Crisis event, even dusted off the old multiverse concept. One of the major themes here was the essence of heroism. It painted a stark contrast between the often dark and conflicted modern day heroes and the memory of the lighter and nobler heroes from the golden age of comics. Trust me, there's a whole lot going on in the story, but one standout moment is the introduction of Jaime Reyes as the new Blue Beetle. And guess what? This ties in perfectly with the key character of our dark multiverse tale. In the dark multiverse twist, Ted Kord, the second Blue Beetle, manages to put a stop to Maxwell Lord and even takes him out. He then seizes control of Checkmate, this super secret spy organization that Maxwell Lord used to run himself. Using Checkmate's resources, Kord successfully averts the crisis that was brewing, but here's the kicker. He lets the power go to his head and eventually fuses with OMAC, spiraling into world domination mode. It's a wild ride from hero to villain, all in the name of power. In the aftermath of Jeff Johns' Sinestro Corps storyline, it set the stage for the Blackest Night event. This epic saga brought Nekron into the picture, the embodiment of death in the universe, with one goal in mind, wiping out all life across the multiverse. It's a story that delves deep into the heavy themes of life and death, all while expanding the emotional spectrum. Think of it as DC's answer to Marvel Zombies, where numerous fallen heroes of the DC universe rise from the grave to join the Black Lantern Corps. As the story unfolds, the Lanterns uncover a critical truth. They need the entity of life to stand a chance against Nekron. At one point, Sinestro gains control of this entity, but he can't quite harness its power, so he ultimately lets it go to defeat Nekron. But here's where the dark multiverse twist comes in. What if Sinestro didn't let go? What if his ego and pride got the better of him? In this dark alternate reality, Sinestro's arrogance leads to the complete annihilation of all life by the Black Lanterns. Only a handful of beings survive, including Sinestro himself, along with Lobo, Dove, and Mr. Miracle. Mr. Miracle stumbles upon a way to recreate the universe using the mysterious source wall, but when Nekron drops the bomb that this act will erase Sparta from existence, Mr. Miracle takes drastic action and ends Dove's life. This sets off a chain reaction of revenge. Lobo, driven by anger, takes out Mr. Miracle. Sinestro, left with no other choice, uses Lobo to channel life energy into the universe. But this creates a grotesque form of life that's hell-bent on destruction. Sinestro fights to escape this nightmarish world, but is thwarted by higher entities who are determined to prevent him from contaminating other universes. It's a tale of unchecked pride and devastating consequences. Now let's get into the big bad of the Dark Metal stories, a nightmarish version of Batman who essentially turns the multiverse upside down. But trust me, his origins are about just as twisted as they come. Picture this, on Earth 22, the Joker makes a chilling discovery. He's slowly dying from the chemicals coursing through his body. Armed with the knowledge of Batman's true identity as Bruce Wayne, he sets out on a mission to push Batman beyond the brink. The Joker goes on a killing spree, taking down many of Batman's infamous foes, and even killing Commissioner Gordon. But that's not enough for him. To torment Bruce even further, he exposes innocent citizens to those same chemicals that turned him into the Joker, ruthlessly murdering parents in front of their own children. It's all part of Joker's twisted plan to taunt Batman by dredging up trauma of his own parents' death. Batman eventually confronts the Joker, and in a brutal showdown, he takes down his arch nemesis. But in the world of comics, it's never quite that simple. The toxins in Joker's body seep into Batman, merging his genius-level intellect and physical prowess with the Joker's madness and sick sense of humor. Now known as the Batman Who Laughs, he seizes control of Earth 22, wiping out his former allies and twisting his own son Damian into a mini-Joker. Not stopping there, he recruits children infected by the Joker toxin, molding them into his horrifying Rabid Robins. It's a tale of descent into darkness that really unnerves you.
Flash of Two Worlds, Flash Volume 1, number 123. This story is often considered to be one of the most important in the history of comic books, as it introduced the concept of the multiverse to DC Comics. The cover itself boasts that it's a spectacular story that is sure to become a classic. The story had a significant impact on DC Comics by providing a way to bring back older characters without taking away from the current generation of comics. It also allowed for different and newer versions of characters to be introduced. The concept has since become commonplace in the comic book industry. To The story tells of Barry Allen, the Flash, who crosses dimensional boundaries into Keystone City, home of the first Flash, Jay Garrick, during a magic show using the Speed Force. Jay Garrick is now aged and retired since his series was cancelled years prior to this issue, following the natural flow of time. Although revolutionary at the time, many people have not actually read the comic book, and it is interesting to read now with the understanding that this is the first book to introduce the concept of the multiverse. Through the course of the comic, Jay and Barry team up to face a team of villains that are threatening the city. The plot, by today's standards, is pretty straightforward, but being able to look at it through a modern lens, we can see how impactful the book was to comic books in general, whether it's DC, Marvel, or anyone and any other company out there. Born to Run, Flash Volume 2, 62 to 65. When Crisis on Infinite Earths happened, Barry Allen died and the DCU needed a new Flash. Wally West stepped up and took over for his mentor. Not many were super confident in Wally, talking both in-universe and readers alike, but his early run asserted the idea that Wally was going to be different than Barry Allen in many ways, especially in his connection and use of the Speed Force. Wally was one of the earliest supporting characters to be introduced in Barry Allen's run, with his introduction in issue number 110 in 1959. He later took the mantle of Kid Flash and became a founding member of the Teen Titans. But between Wally taking over as a Flash and his first appearance, over 20 years had passed, leaving a lot of readers unfamiliar with his origin, especially in a time when the internet wasn't anywhere near what it is now. In the story arc, Born to Run, Mark Waid retells the origin of Kid Flash, intertwining it with an adult Wally reflecting on his past as Kid Flash and his current status as the DCU's Flash. The story had some interesting story points, along with how Wally received his powers and his initial run as Kid Flash. You get some interesting family drama here, and perhaps one of the more iconic moments where, as Kid Flash, Wally manages to save his father from a tornado, much like the scene in which Barry Allen runs around a tornado in the opposite direction to dissolve it. So if you're looking to read up on the origins of Wally West, and you don't have too much time on your hand, this 4-issue story arc should give you everything you need to know about Wally, and how he was first introduced into Flash mythos. Absolute Zero, The Flash, Volume number 2, number 182. This one is one of the easiest ones on the list to recommend. Not only is it a quick read, but it provides a more detailed backstory into one of the more interesting Flash villains. A lot of times, Batman or Spider-Man get credit for having some of the most interesting and varied rogues gallery, but Flash has to be third in a conversation with villains like Reverse Flash, Gorilla Grodd, Mirror Master, and the topic of the story, Captain Cold. Leonard Snart, or Captain Cold, is most well known as the man who mastered Absolute Zero, and is seen by some as a copy of Batman's Mr. Freeze. Although they're similar in some ways, they're distinctly different in many other ways, especially in that Captain Cold's gun is designed to freeze objects to absolute zero, where targets experience severe molecular deceleration. For most objects, this would pretty much cause them to freeze, but when targeting the Flash, it severely reduces the speed at which the Flash can move. This proves to be an interesting back and forth dynamic between the two, as really they are distinct and polar opposites. This has helped to create different and creative stories over the years. This issue focuses on Snart's backstory, including his abusive childhood and more importantly his relationship with his sister, which serves as a wraparound story for these flashbacks. While it doesn't absolve Cold of his crimes, it does put more of an endearing light on the character and provide a reasoning as to why he is the way he is, and reinforces the idea behind just how similar villains and heroes can be, and that while both can have tragic past, it is ultimately their decisions that determine the path they lead.
Thanks for getting this far into the video, and if you're enjoying what you're seeing, why not give this video a thumbs up? It really helps to get this video out to more people like you. And as you guys may have seen on many of my community and Instagram posts, I'm an avid figure collector. I want to share my go-to spot for the latest and greatest figures. Head over to RamFam Collectibles. RamFam Collectibles is a veteran-owned business putting the customer experience first with a variety of in-stock and pre-ordering options, as well as fast and reliable shipping for every single order. They care because they're collectors too. And for 5% off your first order, use the promo code RAMFAM5. But for now, let's get back to the video.
Emergency Stop, Flash, Volume 2, number 130 to 132. This is the second Wally story on the list, and for good reason. During the 1990s, Wally grew to become one of the premier heroes in DC, replacing his mentor Barry Allen after his death in the Crisis on Infinite Earths event. During this time, his initial few years of comics served not only to put him on the same level as Barry in terms of importance, but also attempted to differentiate between the two. While Barry tends to have a more analytical approach to the Speed Force, Wally has more of a spiritual connection that in many ways proves to be more powerful, allowing him to create a stronger, more innate connection to the Speed Force. Emergency Stop is one of these early stories that builds on the idea of Wally's use of power. Written by part-time Flash writer Grant Morrison, this story sees Wally confront the villainous Suit, a weird villain that is actually an inanimate suit that possesses people into doing terrible things while sucking their life force. You have everything here from appearances by Jay Garrick and Max Mercury, Wally dying and cheating death, but the aspect here that I enjoy seeing Wally learn to manipulate his powers in different ways than Barry ever could. Here you can start to see some of the beginnings of Wally's extremely strong connection to the Speed Force. This is definitely one that should be on your list and one to get into since Wally will be the focus of a new Flash series going forward. Death of Iris Allen, Flash Volume Number 1, 275 to 284. This is one of the bigger Barry Allen stories coming out of the first volume of his comics. The storyline ran through 9 issues over the course of 1979 to 1980, where many comic plots were becoming more complex and thought-provoking. For Barry, as a character, this story arc dealt with the death of his wife and how he processed his grief. In fact, throughout the course of the story, we see Barry going through the stages of grief include denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. While normally this would prove interesting in any story, in a superhero scenario, especially with someone like the Flash, whose power when out of control can harm people, what would happen if the emotion were to take over? More recent stories like the Injustice series deal with a grieving Superman who becomes a tyrannical dictator. Barry's story of grief is more intimate, but there are moments when emotion takes over. One notable part deals with Barry in denial of Iris' death, looking to the Justice League to restore Iris to life, and when they tell him it's beyond their power, he goes crazy and begins attacking them to the point where it takes a whole league to stop him. Other instances include a stalker situation, appearances by Captain Boomerang, Heatwave, and Eobard Thawne aka Professor Zoom aka Reverse Flash. It's definitely worth a read, and something different than the usual Flash stories that focus on how the Flash can use his speed to get out of the situation. Here we see a more grounded story, showing us that sometimes no matter how powerful you are, life and death is something that's beyond our control. The Batman. In some ways, he's the most relatable hero. He's human, powerless among the superpowered, but never unprepared. Across all variations of good Batman exists one rule: no killing, because it is a core belief that killing, no matter who and the crime, should never be an option. By extension, his refusal to use guns as a means to put down criminals emphasizes his core values. In some ways, gun would make things easier. So, what if Batman gave up on these rules? Would he still be Batman? Or something worse? The Dark Metal crossovers have introduced us to dark variations of Batman from across the dark multiverse. Batman fused with Doomsday, Batman empowered by the Speed Force, and the most well-known of these evil Batman, the Batman Who Laughs. A twisted version of Batman infected by Joker toxin to the degree where he has the most vicious qualities of Batman mixed together with the lunacy and disregard for others that the Joker has. In a lot of these stories, it's often he who guides other dark Batman under his leadership in the pursuit of his goals. In the Batman Who Laughs miniseries, we are introduced to another of these dark Batman. This one calls himself the Grim Knight, a Batman who kills, and kills with guns, taking down his enemies with no remorse, no mercy, in an effort to clean up Gotham City of crime by whatever means necessary. This is the Batman that many comic fans compare to the Punisher from Marvel Comics, one for the obvious use of deadly force, but also for the motivation. This Batman doesn't want to destroy the world, but rather prevent another child from losing their parents to the mindless criminals that infest Gotham City. But unlike the Punisher, this Batman can't stop himself, now that he's allowed himself to use deadly force. The Grim Knight's origins are much like all other Batman. Stop me if you heard this before. A shortcut through a dark alley after a late movie. A wealthy family of 3 encounter a robber. The robber points a gun at the 2 adults as their child watches in terror. The father tries to de-escalate the situation. Both parents are shot dead. The child is left there. But this time, he sees the gun on the floor, points it at the killer, and shoots him dead to rights. Unlike other Bruce Waynes in the multiverse, this one was able to avenge his parents' death, but like other Batman, he took it upon himself to fight crime so that other children do not suffer the same fate he did. Years of training for martial artists, assassins, and soldiers all leading him to take his fight to Gotham. This Bruce Wayne, much like his counterparts, decided he needed to become something more, a symbol that could inspire fear in the criminals of Gotham, and he went with the bat, becoming the Batman. In this world, the Batman has no remorse for the criminals, asserting that the only way to stop crimes from happening is by killing and ensuring that they won't commit crimes again. Victims like the Penguin, Black Mask, and Killer Croc. One of these other criminals who were killed was a man in a Red Hood mask, killed during an encounter at Ace Chemical Factory. What we learn about this Batman that sets him apart from all the others aside from the killing and guns is that he's never faced many of these supervillains. One of the Joker's origin story has him falling into a vat of chemicals during an encounter with Batman while wearing the Red Hood mask. In this world, the Joker never came to be, due to Batman killing him before he could even turn into the Joker. Part of what makes the Batman we all know and love is the experiences and hardship he's faced, the heavy decisions he's had to make in the most difficult of situations. He, in a way, had things easy. Things have been almost handed to him as a crime fighter in a way because killing is as easy to him as it would be for someone to wash their hands. It's natural. We left off with the Grim Knight taking to the streets of Gotham, killing criminals in an effort to stop and prevent criminal activity. If you're dead, you can't commit more crimes, and those serving under you would probably fear for their life and stop their life of crime. I can see that, and I can see that being something that would deter criminals, especially through the use of fear. But ultimately, that's not the right thing to do. In instances where Batman has had a gun in his hand, or his action led to the death of someone else, he folds into himself in deep regret. In the Batman Beyond animated series show, Bruce Wayne had to use a gun to scare off a criminal as he was getting too old, and his body failed him. He chose to quit being Batman altogether as he felt that he could not stop criminals with his morals and values intact, then he may as well stop altogether. The Grim Knight, however, never had this conscience in him. This question of what's right or what's wrong is simply a means to an end. This is why in this universe, his greatest enemy is Jim Gordon. Gordon, like every other universe, is determined to do right and let the system handle the fates of these criminals, and will not stand for someone like the Grim Knight, who in a sense had decided to become judge, jury, and executioner. Despite some people in the GCPD agreeing with the Grim Knight's methods, Gordon focuses on finding him and stopping him. Eventually, Gordon manages to find out his identity and collect enough evidence to arrest him with the help of the FBI. In his mind, the Grim Knight thinks of those who will die without his help, and this drives him to the Batman Who Laughs, who uses him in a plot to take down Gotham, and in exchange he would be able to exact revenge against Jim Gordon of Prime Earth. Eventually he meets his end at the hand of Jim Gordon's son, a murderer himself who is attempting to reform his life and his relationship with his father. Unlike some of the other Dark Knights that I read up on, the Grim Knight is more grounded and more focused on the world of Gotham, rather than using the powers of other members of the League or villains. His desire to clean up the criminal underground is in many ways similar to how the Punisher in the Marvel Comics acts, but with a classic Batman twist. It kinda sucks that they killed him, as I could see him as a reoccurring foe for Jim Gordon and the GCPD comics that they run every few years, or in other books. That's the unfortunate part with some of these Batman variants. It seems DC is hellbent on killing every one of them except for the Batman Who Laughs, not seeing that some of these variants would make for great villains in other Batman books and other heroes as well.
You did it! You stopped him!
Yes, but I was too late.
He crushed this poor crab's house! I'm so sorry!
I'll be discussing Animal Man, also known as Buddy Baker. He's a unique superhero with the power to temporarily borrow the abilities of any animal. Despite his interesting power, Animal Man wasn't always popular in the world of comics. It wasn't until Grant Morrison revived him in the late 1980s that he gained popularity. Since then, Animal Man has become an important character in the DC universe. In this video, I'll be exploring his origins and history, so sit tight and let's dive in. Let's take a closer look at Animal Man. To be perfectly honest, I feel that initially, he was one of those throwaway characters. Even his abilities at first glance sound pretty average. Animal Man made his first appearance on the DC Comics series Strange Adventures in September of 1965. He was created by writer Dave Wood and artist Carmine Infantino.
Infantino is well known for creating the Barry Allen version of Flash during the Silver Age of comics, along with Bob Kinnear. Animal Man was originally a simple B-list superhero with the ability to temporarily borrow the powers of any animal near him. However, his powers eventually grew to cover the entire animal kingdom, including those of alien creatures. So who is Animal Man and where did he come from? Buddy Baker gained the ability to use the powers of animals after being exposed to radiation from a spaceship explosion. He used these powers to fight crime and defend against alien threats. He later joined the Forgotten Heroes group before the Crisis on Infinite Earths events and was seen with them during the fight. In the post-Crisis universe, his origin story is slightly changed, but retains the core elements of the original. He initially struggled as a superhero, took a break, and worked as a film stuntman before returning to the profession after being inspired by the Justice League International. Buddy is married to his high school sweetheart Ellen, who works as a storyboard artist and a children's book illustrator, and they have 2 children together. He is a compassionate animal rights activist, environmentalist, and a vegetarian. He later discovers that his connection to the M field has been passed on to his daughter Maxine, who also has a connection to the animal kingdom. He wears a mask, but does not go to great lengths to conceal his identity, and wears a denim jacket as part of his costume, since he refuses to wear leather out of moral considerations. Animal Man's powers were expanded upon in the 1980s by Grant Morrison. Morrison added elements of animal rights activism and environmentalism to the character, resulting in a more complex and meaningful character. Morrison's run on the series is considered a classic of the genre and helped to establish as a unique and important character in the DC Comics universe. He has been a member of various superhero teams, including several versions of the Justice League, and has had a number of solo series. His activism and commitment to animal rights and the environment have also made him a symbol of social responsibility for many readers. Animal Man has the power to temporarily borrow the abilities of any animal, thanks to his power known as the morphogenic field. This power connects all living beings together, allowing him to tap into the abilities of any animals around him. When he uses his powers, he can mimic the abilities of animals such as super strength, speed, agility, durability, and flight. He can also mimic the abilities of animals that have extraordinary abilities such as echolocation, night vision, and venomous bites. Additionally, he can communicate with animals and understand their language. Throughout his history, Animal Man has been involved in many different storylines and critically acclaimed comics. So before we dive back into Animal Man, if you're liking what you're seeing so far, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps to get these videos out to other peeps like yourself who might be into them. Lately, I've been checking out some of the lesser known DC characters, so be sure to check out the playlist at the end. But for now, let's get back to talking about Animal Man. Animal Man has been featured in several notable storylines throughout his comic book history. After his revamp by Morrison and his expansion to larger DC storylines following the appearance in 52, he became a prominent character. Some of his more well-known appearances include 52. The story follows a group of characters including Animal Man, Starfire, and Adam Strange, who become stranded on an alien planet and are pursued by bounty hunters. They are later joined by Lobo, but during the battle, Animal Man is killed. However, the aliens who had granted him his powers bring him back to life, and he must reach out to another life form to survive. Eventually, he returns to Earth and reunites with his family, but they are targeted by Animal Man's enemies. Starfire, who had also been with them, helps to protect them and is shocked to see Animal Man alive again. Countdown. In the comic series Countdown to Adventure, Animal Man teams up with Adam Strange and Starfire, written by Adam Beechin. The story begins with Buddy's family caring for Starfire, who has yet to regain her powers. Buddy convinces his wife to let Starfire stay with them as a nanny for their children. Together, they work to stop a strange form of madness that has affected the people of San Diego. However, Buddy's relationship with Starfire causes his wife to become jealous, thinking that he is in love with her. Throughout the series, Buddy's powers are unpredictable and manifest in new ways. Once their extraterrestrial adventures are over, Starfire leaves the Baker home, expressing that they will always hold a special place in her heart. In 2017, after the events of DC Rebirth, Animal Man became a reserve member of the newly formed Justice League. He worked alongside other reserve members such as Adam Strange and Swamp Thing to help the League out. After the series, Justice League No Justice, Animal Man's name was mentioned in the new Justice League series by Wonder Woman. He was seen assisting Vixen in repairing the Earth, fighting alongside the League against the Legion of Doom, and protecting a crucial key from falling into their hands. Animal Man attended a gathering of the Justice League Dark, and Teen Titans at the Hall of Justice. Later,
Batman summoned Animal Man along with the Justice League, Teen Titans, and the Justice Society of America to repair the Source Wall in preparation for an impending multiverse war. He helped these teams in a cross-universe battle against Perpetua and Lex Luthor's Legion of Doom. During the Dark Knight's Death Metal storyline, Animal Man was captured by the Batman Who Laughs and his Dark Knights on New Apocalypse, but was freed by Wonder Woman, Batman, and Harley Quinn. He fought alongside Red Tornado and Blue Beetle against Robin King, but was killed when Robin King summoned the anti-living versions of his family to attack him, and shrapnel from Red Tornado's death struck him. Batman later brought him back to life using the Black Lantern ring. Despite appearing in numerous storylines, Animal Man remains one of the lesser known characters in DC and has yet to make a live action appearance. However, he has made some animated cameos here and there. I believe he would be a great addition to a group movie or television series, as his character has solid storyline, especially in the sense that he is an everyman type of personality and relatable backstory with a family. It would be cool to see him in a new DC universe down the line. Let me know your thoughts on Animal Man and which other characters you would like to learn about. Thanks for watching, and as always, take care and have an awesome day. Wow. To those who stuck around, whether you're sleeping, which in that case good night, or if you're awake, what's going on, guys? Thanks for watching. I have some more stuff on my channel for you to watch. If you're into some darker stuff, take a look at these two videos. In this video, I take a look at Batman and I take a look at PTSD in a more technical, logical sense and see if a lot of his actions, character flaws, and those things match up with the real diagnosis behind PTSD. Or take a look at this video where I explored the identity crisis, the early 2000s series with Sue Dimney's murder, about the ethics of mind wiping villains and heroes alike. And if you don't want some darker stuff, cool. For some lighter stuff, why not take a look at my growing playlist of Legion of Superhero videos? Go on, click something. I know you're tired of hearing me talking at this point. Beyond that, take care guys, and have an awesome day.